for time. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, but I don't wanna jinx it, baby. Let's not get ahead of my time. Oh.
What's up, everyone? How are you all doing this happy Wednesday? The hearing is at 10:15. That's from Al Mosca's asking. And another one of you asked, hey, when is Brad going to be testifying? He's going to be testifying early and often today. I've even got Brad's opening statement up on the screen where, yes, he does mention XRP. He says Ripple leverages the XRP ledger, a decentralized, battle-tested open-source blockchain, and its native digital asset XRP to facilitate payments. XRP is built to enable fast, low-cost, and highly scalable transactions. So yes, Brad will be mentioning XRP. I'm talking about outside of his initial statement. So there we go, man. Rolling Mountain says, how are you feeling, Klaus? I'm feeling pretty good today. I woke up and I had a whole bunch of alerts on my phone, and the reason I had alerts on my phone is because I started seeing some volume tie in with the pumperoni, lowercase p pumperoni, lowercase p pumperoni. Now here's the deal, everyone. We got to that 240 mark, but then we got rejected, but we might come back. We just got to see what happens. Yo, and for real, can someone help me out here? I'm looking at the chat, okay? And I see a bunch of people, and it looks like they have crowns with number ones. Crowns, I see number 2s, number 3s, I see purple crowns, gray crowns. Can someone tell me what the crowns are? I have never seen that in the chat before. I have no idea what that is. I'm even curious about it. Dan Russell says, so this is the day all those XRP YouTubers says it'll hit 10,000. It's not going to hit 10,000 today. It's just not. Let's just be realistic. I mean, look, if we stay north of 230, it's a good freaking day. Doran Butler's hanging out with us, says, my face melted, I can't see. Oh. Yanni Boy says, it's most active members. Oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't know that. I've never seen the crown thing in the chat before. So maybe this is something new with a little bit of YouTuber action. Pretty cool. Yeah, we got a lot of you watching. Make sure you hit the little thumbs up thingy right there. We've got a little XRP up on the screen. The Senate hearing. Oh, Lizzie Warren. Oh, yeah, Elizabeth Warren is here. She, yeah, we're going to have to deal with her. We're going to have to deal with Lumens. Hopefully it's not too bad. But that's going to start at 10:15 today. The people that are going to be talking today is you got Summer Mersinger, Jonathan Levin, Dan Robinson, Brad Garlinghouse, and Timothy Massad, Mr. Richard Painter as well. So you got a pretty diverse board right there. A pretty diverse panel, sorry, not board. Overall, in the crypto markets, you're seeing green up on the screen. There you go. What else do I got? It's like Patreon, but through YouTube. So I guess the crown is the most active people in chat. That's pretty freaking cool, everyone. Artisan Restoration says, you're the best, Klaus. No, I'm not the best. I'm improving. I think we can all agree that there are times that I make mistakes. There are things that I need to get better at, but I'm constantly improving and working on it. There we go. I like that. Krishna says, yeah, the crown is new. I think it depends on the interaction. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think it's whoever has the crown, it's like the most active in chat is maybe what that is. I don't know. Like, I've never seen this before, so it's kind of cool. Awesome. Is the meeting going to be live streamed? Yes, it is, everyone. I've got it up on the screen right now. I am just waiting for them to upload theirs. They usually upload it like right before it goes live. By the way, the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs does have their own page too, so you could check it out if you want. Radiant Rick says, I swear at this point your videos move the market. I hope not. I'm just trying to be a news guy, man. I'm not trying to move markets. I'm just trying to give y'all information as timely and accurate as possible. And just throwing it out there, I admit this is a ton of fun. If you wonder, like if I genuinely like this, I freaking do. Like, I freaking love this. I'm getting ready to go on vacation soon. Like, it's just me. Actually, I'm taking my mom. And everyone else in my family is staying here. But I'm taking my mom on vacation soon. And even while I'm taking my mom on vacation, I'm going to be bringing you the news. Why am I going to be bringing you the news? Because, like, I like doing this. Like, this for me is a lot of fun. I like doing the videos. I like interacting. I like hanging out with chat. This is a lot of fun. Krishna dropping support on the channel. Everyone give Krishna a big thank you. Dropping some oi rose. There you go. My German background coming through. Says Brad is going to use this to pimp his hand powdered up to smack the Wicked Witch of West Warren. Oh, dude. We're going to have to deal with Warren and Loomis today, all right? Just throwing it out there. We're going to do it, all right? Dan Russell says, Klaus, get into politics. Run for election. The world needs more men like you. I've been honestly talking about it with my wife. I don't want to go too deep into it, but we've talked about it, and it's a possibility for 2026. A lot of it depends on my health. For those of you that don't know, I'm having a little bit of health issues right now. I'm set to see the specialist in about 3 weeks. So, if my health turns around, I think I could handle some of that kind of stuff. It's just right now, I just got to make sure I take care of myself. So, just throwing it out there. There we go. Other background, please. You got it. I'll put the heat map back up. No one wants to see Commie Lizzie up on the screen. Ducks Garden Effect says, lots of green on your screen. Will I take profits today? Maybe. Still believing in the long. Yeah, totally a believer in the long, but I understand the profit taking in the short term, right? No one ever went broke taking profits. I'm a firm believer in 2 bags. I have a long term that I always add to, and this is for everything, not just crypto. Like, I do it with gold, I do it with stocks and stuff like that. I have a long-term bag that I add to, and then I have my short-term one where, like, I play, pumps and dumps and stuff like that. So I'm always taking profit to make sure that, like, I'm, putting green in my pocket. But my longs, I don't touch. Ply is dropping support on the channel, says stack and relax. Everyone give Ply a big thank you. I appreciate that, everyone. I really do. I appreciate that one. Christian is hanging out, says Klaus is the most genuine person in the space. No BS, no hopium, just straight honesty if you like it or not. That's my angle. My angle is to give you the news, good, bad, happy, or sad. Now, that being said, some of the news I bring isn't the best. Some of the concern I have is look at what we got up on the screen. XRP did hit 240 this morning. My phone was blowing up like crazy, but the problem is now we're starting to pull back. And I was kind of hoping that this price action would kind of carry us into the hearing, and that like we would see it kind of transition through, but it's kind of falling apart before. But we're going to keep an eye on it. Don't worry about that. Play the pump on the dump contract, hodl for long. Yeah, that's seriously how I do it. I have 2 bags. Short-term bag and long-term bag. My short-term bag, dude, I play pumps and dumps all the time. That's just how it is, right? Long-term bag, I don't touch. I just add to it until I feel like I have enough. And then I move to, like, my next thing, and I add to that until I feel I have enough. Justin, a truck, says, I like that name. That rings very well. Says, best streamer, thanks for doing live. Oh, yeah, no problem. I'm super happy to do a live. In about 15 minutes, we should be getting them to fire up their hearing. When they do, I will bring that information to you. Like I said, I'm going to have all of this stuff set up in the description below. We're going to be good to go on that. We'll do sound checks and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, other than that, questions, comments, we got about 10-12 minutes until it comes live. I do have Brad's opening statement right here. Pretty good opening statement. I'm not going to read into anything too like crazy about it right now, but Brad's opening statement, if you look at it, okay, so in the description box, what you're going to find is you're going to find this, right? At the bottom is everyone's opening statements. It's all linked in the description below, all right, everyone? So if you want to read the opening statement, you're welcome to. Oh, Trick's dropping support on the channel from across the pond. Trick says, get sunscreen for your holiday, factor 69. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, and everyone give Trick a big thank you for dropping support on the channel. So I live in South Carolina. It is hot as balls out here. That being said, I am going on vacation here super soon. And where I'm going on vacation is not going to be as hot, which is nice. So I will definitely need sunscreen because I'm going to go to a very super awesome place. So yes, Trick, I will be getting sunscreen, SPF factor 69. Axolot Life Aquatics dropping support on the channel, says Rage Out. A little bit of gamer rage right there. Love it. I got to admit, I've been playing Tarkov lately. There's got to be a reset, or I'm sorry, the wipe is, I believe, happening today. So I have been playing my Tarkov, everyone. Just throwing it out there. I don't know if I have any Tarkov fans in the house, but I've been playing, dude. I've been wiping. I got Tagilla yesterday. Just throwing it out there. I had a 45 rounder. I stuck it in the stomach, and I just pulled that action on him. So, Aurora says, will Brad mention XRP, or will it be all about the crypto market? Well, right now, 69% of you, nice percentage, by the way, 69% of you says, you know what? Brad is going to specifically mention XRP. Now, he's going to mention it in his opening statement. I've got it right here. But outside of his opening statement, will he message it or mention it? And I'm thinking he will. I think he has to. Braden Lee says, what kind of bikes you got? I got an Orbea. Oh, well done, Orbea. I'm a Trek guy, as you can see. I've got two Treks. I've got one right there, and I've got one right there. Domanis. These are both Domanis. Carbons. That's how I do it, man. Just throwing it on out there. Woods only, right? Yes, Jack O'Neill. I've been playing woods only, except for the last 2 days. I've been playing interchange only. And then last night, because I know the wipe was happening, I went into factory and I was just spraying and praying. Just throwing it out there. And my name for when I play Tarkov is Crypto with Klaus. So if you shoot me or if I go after you, then just throwing it out there, you know who it is, because it's Crypto with Klaus. So just throwing it out there. Yeah, I love the Trek bikes. They've been really good. A lot of good parts. And I'm a big duathlon type person. I haven't been able to do one because I've been sick lately. But I love it. I've been itching to go back. As soon as they give me the okay to train again, trust me, I am going to be freaking training again because I'm getting anxious. It's been I haven't been able to train in now, oh God, mid-May they had me stop completely. I'm only allowed to take walks now. I can't run. I can't do anything stressful, anything strenuous. I'm supposed to be chilling the F out, so just throwing it out there. Let's see, Matt says, got any new slabs? Yes, I ordered a couple. They're Pokemon. Just hear me out. I ordered a couple. I haven't gotten them yet. I should be getting them hopefully before I go on vacation. Just throwing it out there. Predicting an RLUSD fest. Yeah, RLUSD got some good news today, by the way. A little BNY custody action. And we've got the hearing set to come in about 8 minutes. Now, let's take a look here at the price of those candlesticks. This is what I'm going to be watching very, very heavily today, is the price action of XRP, and if it can hold, and if we get some pump during this hearing. Do we see something that comes out of this that all of a sudden the market's like, yo, we want to get in on this? Doran Butler dropping support on the channel. Everyone give Doran a big thank you. Love it. Everyone, seriously, the support has been amazing. Thank you, everyone, for that. Anthony Cardiel says, I've got a BMC SLR7. Love that bike. Ooh, wow. Nice. Well done. Well done. Yeah, I'm a big Trek fan. Huge Trek fan. That's all my bikes have been Trek. I just love the parts. Their customer service is freaking awesome. I love it, man. I love it. Ben Q says Pokemon is investing in a whole different world. It's crazy. Just got 151 delivered. Yeah, some of these boxes, man, are going for sick money, dude. Sick money. But you just got to be careful because of the bubble. You know what I mean? That's just the problem. Schema Citizen says, when does this meeting start? The meeting starts at 10:15. They sometimes do run a couple minutes late, but don't worry. I will make sure that I got us all covered for that. As soon as it goes live, we'll switch over to the screen and be ready to go. Dan Russell says, hey, Klaus, where can we pick up a Brad Garlinghouse rookie PSA? Okay, now that being said, I shit you not. I almost bought a Jerome Powell PSA 10 slab. There are actually Jerome Powell PSA slabs out there. I shit you not. Seriously, if you go on eBay and you look it up, there are card makers that make political cards and important people cards. Seriously, they have them out there. Just throwing it out there. Let's see, what else we got for you? Yeah, the Treks do last forever. They really do. They really, really last a long time. The thing that I like, too, is I like rim brakes, just throwing it out there. I'm a big fan of rim brakes, so I run all the ultra lights, and I run the race light rims. That's just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there. That's how I do it, all right? I'm just being open and honest. I like my Trek bikes, you know, I'm one of those kind of people. XRP price up on the screen earlier today. We hit 240 and 39 up on the candlestick. We're since pulling back a little bit right now, sitting at 236.53. Gonna keep an eye on this during the stream. This is gonna be a big one, okay? We're gonna keep an eye on it, see if the momentum continues. Flagrantly obtuse. Oh, I like that. A little bit of geometry in for this morning. Says, just want to say thank you for all you do. In your opinion, does RLUSD really benefit XRP at all? The burn rate is insignificant. I'm worried about implications of the injunction not being dropped. How will XRP be used in the US? That's a really good question, because you're right. The burn rate is insignificant with XRP because it takes hardly any XRP to move money. So that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because it's super cheap to move money with XRP and it hardly uses any of it, right? The problem we got, though, is since it's super cheap to move a lot of money with XRP, you don't make money on the burn rate. What we really need more than anything is some juicy speculative news that translates into either like strategic reserve buying news or people using XRP for settlement, people using XRP for payment, something big coming out of XRP, maybe like a DApp that all of a sudden everyone is like, yo, this is the DApp that uses XRP big time. We've seen out there that speculation is honestly the way of the land, right? Let's just be real here. Crypto speculation corridor is where it's at. The problem we got, though, is we need to get past speculation and we need to go into usage. And that's a big problem right now. Now, that being said, there's about $1 billion worth of money committed to buying XRP as a strategic reserve asset. That is big. That is direct buying of XRP. That's the juicy news we all like to hear. But you're going to need a hell of a lot more than that, because think about it. What is $1 billion worth of XRP? Like here, let's get our calculator out. Let's just do some easy math, right? So let's put 1 billion up on the screen. Okay, so we got 1 billion up on the screen. Divided by the price right now, 2.36. So that's only 423 million XRP. That's not a lot, right? I mean, think about it. 423 million XRP is nothing, especially when the volume of XRP is 4 billion. That's only 10% of the daily volume. So that being said, you get what I'm saying with that? It's where we need that speculation to turn into what? Usage and utility. That's the big one. Let's see. DJ Chrome, or D Chrome J, gosh, sorry, I can't talk this morning. So sometimes I feel like Ripple was using XRP to fund them. When they get RLUSD all situated, XRP won't be used. Yeah, of course these companies are using XRP to fund it. Stellar uses XLM to fund it. Tron uses TRX to fund it. Cardano Foundation uses ADA to fund it. All these companies use it. Sailor uses their stock, right, from Strategy to fund their thing. Everyone uses it. That's not the big deal. The question you have to ask yourself, though, is, are they using it the best, right? Are they using their money to the best of their ability to proliferate things? That's the whole thing, man. Andrew Butcher's hanging out with this channel member. Thank you to all the channel members, by the way. Says, just got here. Come on for Brad. Give us the goods. Thanks, Klaus, for the feed. You're very, very welcome. Dan Russell says, my only PSA 10 is a Russell Wilson. Need lots to get graded. Yeah, I mean, grading is expensive, though. Let's just be real here. And they've been stingy lately. Just throwing it out there. Up on the screen right now is a lot of green. The Senate is really hanging out with us right now. Hopefully in 2 minutes they're going to be firing it up. I'm just waiting for them to put their stream action up on the screen. The thing with the Senate, these subcommittees, is sometimes they don't run on time. So, you know, I'll help you out with that. Hey, buddy, how's it going? I got my doggy here with me. And got this up on the screen. They've got a little bit of action going on. Here we go. I've got this coming up right here. Let me just fix my windows super fast. As soon as that goes live, I'll make sure I switch to their feed. Flagrantly follows up with us, dropping more support. Thank you so much for that. It says, speculation is rough. Utility is needed. Even then, if XRP is used, how much could that really increase the price significantly? It can change it a lot. I mean, look at what the election did for XRP. That shows you the optimism that's there. That shows you that there are tons of people out there that believe in the future of crypto. We just need the regs, man. Like, seriously, we need the regs. And that's what you saw in the November Pumperoni was the markets telling us, look, when regs come in, we think we can make something juicy happen. And that's the big key that's the big takeaway from all this. A lot of companies don't want to buy XRP. Why? Because there's no regs. I get Torres said, XRP itself is not a security, but you got other judges out there that are like, look, we don't give a shit what Torres says. You've got other courts out there. In California, there's a case where the judge specifically said, XRP is a security in this instance. So what you really need is regs. And the reason why BTC and ETH are in all of those ETFs is because they're viewed as a commodity. So if all of a sudden we get some new regaronis here, right? Then you start seeing where companies can get into it. Then you can start looking at it and going, okay, well, wait a minute. Now we're not just talking about speculation of usage, speculation of regs. Now we're actually getting the regs and companies feel comfortable buying it because, like, how would you feel as a company, right? Let's say you wanted to buy $1 billion worth of XRP, but then all of a sudden we get a new president in like 3 years, and the new president appoints people that are anti-crypto. Now all of a sudden your $1 billion investment, what if it gets wiped, right? Like you get like another Gensler person in, and all of a sudden the price tanks. Now your $1 billion investment is worth what, everyone? Way less. So that's where, like, you have a lot of issues where people are like, yo, we need the regs, we need them to go through Congress. Executive orders suck because the next president can do their own executive order, cancel them, override them, etc. That's why we need it through Congress, and that's what businesses are waiting for. There you go. Let's see, what else do we got for us today? They should be starting up any minute now. They've got their little thingy up on the screen. I'm just waiting for them right now. Like I said, the Senate isn't, how do I put this politely? They're not on time like your guy is right here. I'm usually pretty early. I was hanging out with the chat for like 25 minutes before the video even started. So just throwing it out there. Northern Redneck says XRP was already ruled as a currency. But the problem is you got some players saying it's a currency, some players saying this, some players saying that. You need something concrete. Irrelevant One dropping support on the channel says, with the implementation of Web3, it seems the market is about to reward a group of early investors that were able to identify a paradigm shift way ahead of the rest of the population. I totally agree with that. It seems like the creators of crypto and what they saw for decentralization are going to be the ultimate winners here. But that's how it is with everyone, right? The first people that get into it that are willing to take the risk are the ones that get rewarded the most. But remember, though, they're also the ones that get pounded the most. They're also the ones that had to sit through horrible price action. You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's kind of something you have to keep in mind is, yes, you're right. The people that get in earliest are usually the ones that make the action on it. But they're also the ones that get beat up the most. You know what I mean? Jake and Jur says, I wouldn't mind seeing Brad scalping a... Well, he wouldn't be scalping because she's a fake Native American. Just throwing it out there. Gosh. What is she? 1% Native American, 100% stupid? Yeah, she's... Oh, Lizzie Warren. Just waiting for them to come on live.
90 seconds. The ranking member is coming from the...
Oh. I just heard an announcement. I think they said in 90 seconds they're going to be firing it up. I don't know if you heard that come across, but yeah, they said in 90 seconds we should be able to have this start here. Obviously, the Senate's late. They suck. I mean, when is government ever on time? Right? I mean, let's be honest here. Come on now. When is the government ever on time? So we should be able to fire it up any moment. And again, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the price. I'm going to be getting very close. Greminder dropping support on the channel. Everyone give Greminder a big thank you as well. Says, I simply just like the token. Well done. There's no harm with that as well. We all have our own things. What got you into XRP initially? Thoughts on HBAR XDC? What got me into XRP is, again, the idea of moving money. I'm kind of into this whole thing where I'm like into the tech and money part of it, like the global finance money part of it. And what I really, really, really like about the idea of XRP is I like the idea that it's like a new version of money and it matches what we do. I like the idea that the market is open 365 24/7 because the world moves 365 24/7. Remember when Israel and Iran had their thing going on? Yeah, we were able to trade that live. You know who couldn't trade it live? The stock market.
Thank you for
here we go.
Thank you for being here. We'll go ahead and get this market structure hearing started. I want to begin by celebrating a significant win for the American people. Just a few weeks ago, the Senate passed the bipartisan Genius Act, the soon-to-be first federal framework for payment stablecoins. Genius is the first step towards revolutionizing the financial system and updating our payment systems and will secure U.S. global's dollar dominance for decades and decades to come. It's also a win for consumer protection and for national security. But passing Genius is more than just a legislative win. It's a testament to what's possible when Congress works together and puts principles before partisan politics. We can deliver actual results for the American people. From day one, I've promised under my leadership here at the Banking Committee that we would return to what we call regular order and deliver real results for the American people. With the Genius Act, we did just that. And now we have an opportunity and a chance to build on that success. Today's hearing is the first for full committee hearing on digital assets. This is a crucial step toward developing a comprehensive framework that gives innovators the clarity they need and gives investors the protections they deserve. Because make no mistake, blockchain technology and digital assets are not going away. They are here to stay. The question we should ask ourselves is whether the United States will lead in shaping the future of digital finance or whether we'll let other countries like Singapore and the UAE set the standards while American jobs and innovation leaves our shores. Unfortunately, the Biden administration failed to meet the moment. Instead of clear rules, we saw an enforcement-first approach that punished innovation and created a legal minefield for entrepreneurs. However, the Trump administration understands the importance of innovation, opportunity, and keeping American talent on American soil. It's time to get back to that pro-growth, pro-America first mindset. Here's the reality. The market, not Washington, should decide what works. Our job is to set clear, light-touch guardrails to protect investors, stop fraud, and allow responsible innovation to flourish. But instead, regulators under the Biden administration have sent mixed messages, forcing companies to spend millions and millions of dollars just to guess at what's legal. In fact, we've seen agencies like the SEC and the CFTC contradict each other while the American people are left just to guess and, frankly, left behind. That confusion has consequences. Innovation is leaving, jobs are leaving, and the global competitors are filling that vacuum. That's why the Senate Banking Committee Republicans have put forward clear principles for market structure legislation, principles that recognize the need to clarify and clearly define what is a commodity, what is a security, and how digital assets can trade and be custodied in a way that fosters innovation while protecting investors. We don't need more roadblocks. We need rules that actually work. That means legislation that will, number one, clearly define which tokens are securities. Two, supports modern trading infrastructure. Three, ensures appropriate illicit finance protections are in place. And four, protects investors while fostering innovation. And let's set the record straight. Crypto isn't lawless. It's traceable. In fact, Crypto companies are helping law enforcement track illicit activity with greater precision than traditional finance allows. The data shows that more illegal activity still happens with cash than with crypto. Today, we'll hear from a strong panel about what's working, what's broken, and what reforms are needed. This is not about scoring political points. It's about protecting investors, rewarding innovation, and ensuring that the next generation of financial technology is made in America. Let's seize this opportunity together and deliver clarity, consistency, and leadership the American people deserve. Thank you to our witnesses for participating in today's hearing. Such a very important hearing, and I look forward to your discussion. Ranking Member Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start with an apology. I'm going to be bouncing in and out. This is also the markup of the National Defense Authorization Act, and we are in live rewriting of the bill, and so I'm going to have to spend a lot of time over there. And I appreciate the chairman's and the rest of the committee's indulgence here. You know, I want to thank you for having this hearing today. I have been calling for stronger rules and enforcement in the crypto market for many years now. The crypto market has grown 15-fold in just the last 5 years. It's now at about $3 trillion, at least in 2024, where we've got the data. While growth in the market may unlock new opportunities for innovation, risks to investors, our financial system, and our national security have also increased at the same time. Consider some recent data. According to the FBI, Americans lost more than $9 billion to cryptocurrency fraud last year. And it's the trend lines that are particularly concerning. It's a 66% increase from the year before. According to Chain Analysis, North Korean hackers stole a record $1.3 billion from crypto platforms in 2024 and then turned around and topped it in just a single heist with a $1.5 billion heist earlier this year. According to TRM Labs, quote, terrorist organizations demonstrated increased sophistication in their use of cryptocurrency, turning to unhosted wallets, mixers, and privacy coins like Monero. We need a crypto regulatory framework that reduces these risks, but I am concerned that what my Republican colleagues are aiming for is another industry handout that gives the crypto lobby exactly its wish list, the blessing of our government's approval, combined with crypto rules that are weaker than the rules that every other financial actor must follow. The crypto industry may be calling the shots for Republicans, but nobody wants weak crypto rules more than the President of the United States. A majority of President Trump's wealth, as much as $7 billion worth, is now based in crypto, from issuing his own stable coin, to issuing his own meme coin, to owning a Bitcoin mining company, and to controlling a huge portfolio of crypto investments. Again, according to Chainalysis, the president and his associates pocketed more than $320 million in fees alone from the Trump meme coin, while the majority of retail investors who bought that same token actually lost money. Now, if we're going to provide rules of the road for crypto, we need to shut down the super highway for presidential corruption at the same time. We need crypto legislation that will strengthen our financial system, not make it worse. Here are principles that I think should guide our work. First, new crypto rules shouldn't open a back door to destroy the securities laws that have served as the bedrock of our capital markets for nearly 100 years. I'm particularly worried here because some recent proposals, including the Clarity Act that the House is voting on this week or next week, include language that would allow non-crypto companies to tokenize their assets in order to evade SEC regulations. Think for just a minute about what that means. Under the House bill, A publicly traded company like Meta or Tesla could simply decide to put its stock on the blockchain and poof, it would escape all SEC regulation. That is a serious problem for our country. Second, crypto investors should have the same protection from getting scammed or getting cheated as investors in any other asset. Doesn't have to be bigger, but it should be the same. For example, there is no reason that the rules prohibiting stock exchanges from simultaneously serving as brokers and giving preferential treatment to their own trades over their customers. We have rules against that elsewhere. Those same rules should apply to the crypto market too. Third, ensure that turmoil in the crypto market doesn't infect our traditional financial system. And that means making sure that taxpayers are not on the hook for backstopping risky crypto bets, and that crypto exchanges, crypto dealers, and other intermediaries face strong capital liquidity and risk management safeguards so they can meet their obligations to consumers and counterparties, even in times of market stress. Fourth, counter the threat of illicit finance with common sense rules to fight crime and protect our national security. Crypto service providers that act as financial institutions must be required to implement anti-money laundering programs. Republicans refuse to strengthen AML rules and close sanctions loopholes in the Genius Act, and their claim was that they would deal with this in the crypto market structure bill. Well, this is it. No more kicking the can down the road. Now is the time to solve that problem. And finally, if Congress is going to ratify a sweeping crypto regulatory regime, it is critical to shut down the president's crypto corruption. This means prohibiting public officials, including the President of the United States, prohibiting public officials from issuing, sponsoring, or profiting from crypto tokens. I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues to get this done the right way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Senator Warren. We will now move to witness testimony. Today we have 6 witnesses before us. Our first witness is the Honorable Summer Mersinger, CEO of Blockchain Association. Ms. Messenger, you now have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Warren, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Summer Mersinger, and I'm the CEO of Blockchain Association. We're the leading collective voice of the digital asset industry in the United States, representing more than 130 of the most innovative job creators and stakeholders in the blockchain ecosystem. Our members, many of whom are startups and small businesses, are building the next generation of the internet and a new wave of finance here in the United States. From software developers and infrastructure providers to investment firms and trading platforms, we are proud to advocate for the responsible growth of this transformative technology. I'm here today to deliver a unified message from our industry. The United States urgently needs clear, comprehensive, and carefully designed rules for digital assets. Without thoughtfully crafted rules for the road, we risk stifling innovation, leaving American consumers without proper safeguards and protections, and ceding leadership in a sector that will define the future of global finance and technology. Regulating the industry with existing laws has created ambiguity, stifling American innovation, and driving entrepreneurs to jurisdictions with clearer legal frameworks. While jurisdictions like the EU, the UK, Japan, and Singapore are implementing bespoke digital asset frameworks, the United States is falling behind. It's not a matter of whether to regulate, it's how. We need bipartisan legislation that provides clarity, encourages responsible innovation, and reinforces America's role as a global leader in financial innovation. To guide that effort, Blockchain Association has put forward 12 principles that we believe should form the foundation of any durable market structure legislation. Let me highlight a few key themes of our principles many of which are similar to and align with the Senate Banking Committee Crypto Market Structure Principles released recently by Chairman Scott, Senators Lumens, Tillis, and Hagerty. First, we need a functional and modern framework tailored to the realities of the blockchain ecosystem. This space includes not just traditional financial intermediaries, but also software developers, validators, and other participants who don't fit neatly into 20th century regulatory categories. Second, we must recognize that digital assets are not inherently securities. Much of the current confusion stems from attempting to apply the 1946 Howey test to this technology. Code is not a security. Third, there must be a clear, workable path for platforms to register and operate. Right now, no such path exists. Fourth, strong consumer protections are essential. Our industry fully supports consumer safeguards such as secure custody of customer funds, detailed disclosures, bans on market manipulation, and robust oversight. These are not regulatory burdens. They are the foundation of trust and resilience. Finally, we must view establishing a federal regulatory framework as a national priority. Digital assets and blockchain technology are revolutionizing financial services, supply chains, and digital identity. The country that leads on this policy will set global norms and unlock enormous economic and strategic benefits. The United States should be that leader. And this is our moment to lead. Blockchain Association and its members are not asking for a world without rules. We're asking for clear rules, rules that protect consumers, support innovation, and ensure that the next generation of the internet is built on American values. We urge this committee to seize this historic opportunity and pass meaningful bipartisan market structure legislation this year. We stand ready to be a resource in this endeavor. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mersinger. We will now turn to Jonathan Levin, CEO of Chain Analysis.
Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Warren, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be back here to testify. I'm Jonathan Levin, co-founder and CEO of Chainalysis, the blockchain data company. We maintain the largest database of blockchain intelligence, which powers prevention, investigation, and disruption of illicit activity on the blockchain. We serve over 1,500 clients worldwide, including the largest financial institutions, fintechs, and decentralized applications. We also support over 350 public sector agencies with tools, data, and services to fight illicit activity. Over the last 10 years of Chainalysis, we have partnered with law enforcement and industry to disrupt some of the largest threats to our national security and public safety. We have proudly helped the US government seize over $12.4 billion of criminal proceeds. These cases have included taking down the largest online drug marketplaces, seizing funds from Hezbollah and Hamas, dismantling the largest child abuse material websites, and tackling the latest pig butchering campaigns. The power of our technology, combined with the authorities of law enforcement and the industry partnership, have proven to be a more effective disruptor of illicit activity than anything seen before in traditional finance. Our mission at Chainalysis is to build trust in blockchains. All forms of value will be transferred using this technology. We are here to prevent abuse and pave the way for all people, businesses, and governments to leverage its potential. The United States can be the major beneficiary if we get the policy framework right and allow regulators to adapt and change with the pace of the technology. I have 3 policy insights that I want to share today with the committee. First, the blockchain introduces a fundamentally new model for financial oversight. We often hear the phrase in these rooms, same activity, same risk, same regulatory outcome. But the unprecedented visibility offered by the public blockchain has to be factored into the assessment of both activity and risk. With the right tools, the public ledger becomes a powerful resource for market participants, regulators, and law enforcement to protect financial integrity. The consideration of different types of activity and risks should first use all of the available information about how these mechanisms work and the relative transparency and residual risk that are associated with these mechanisms. In contrast to traditional financial systems, the ongoing monitoring, oversight, and supervision of the system must be built first on publicly available information. Second, we need to equip government agencies to fully leverage this new paradigm. Getting the right regulations in place will require building capacity of different agencies and industry bodies to tackle the different types of risks, particularly as it relates to illicit finance and payments. It requires the government to understand the operational risks involved in the deployment of smart contracts and decentralized infrastructure and the accompanying mitigations. It requires the government to leverage the transparency and available real-time information for effective supervision. And we need to be designing compliance regimes so that all institutions can engage with decentralized technologies. Government agencies with the right mandates and a focus on public-private partnerships will lead to the type of market infrastructure that all market participants are searching for. Third and finally, the blockchain actually enhances our ability to act quickly against illicit actors. As stated, following the money on the blockchain is actually easier than in traditional finance. But furthermore, issuers of tokenized assets can actually take actions to easily freeze and seize assets. I'll give you an example. In a recent pig butchering case, crypto exchange OKX and stablecoin issuer Tether froze and then seized $225 million of criminal proceeds in collaboration with US Secret Service. The traceability and programmability of these assets is a key benefit in addressing illicit activity. At Chainalysis, we are proud to support the US government in our ability to keep the digital asset ecosystem safe, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, sir. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Dan Robinson, General Partner at Paradigm.
Chair Scott, Ranking Member Warren, Subcommittee Chair Lumens, Subcommittee Ranking Member Gallego, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me to testify today on the importance of crypto market structure legislation and how to safely and equitably grow the crypto industry in America. My name is Dan Robinson, and I serve as a general partner at Paradigm, which is a research-driven investment firm focused on crypto. My research work has focused on helping portfolio companies solve technical problems related to market and mechanism design, particularly for applications in decentralized finance, or DeFi. I'm here to talk about the benefits DeFi can bring to the financial system, why its promise could be strengthened by a well-designed market structure bill, and why a bill that doesn't take it into account could be harmful to innovation. Crypto provides an alternative to our traditional world of finance. What stablecoins do for money and payments, DeFi does for trading, lending, and other functions of the financial system. DeFi can reduce costs and improve accessibility by removing unnecessary frictions in the back-end infrastructure of Wall Street. Decentralized finance is in its infancy, but it has already had a tremendous effect on one small corner of the financial system, crypto itself. For many crypto natives, the natural place to trade is now on decentralized rather than centralized exchanges. Decentralized exchanges work very differently from centralized ones. One illustrative example is Uniswap, with over $1 billion in daily volume. The core of the Uniswap protocol is a set of smart contracts that allow any user to efficiently provide liquidity between any two assets. Anyone can use Uniswap to instantly trade with other users without ever giving up custody over their assets. These decentralized exchanges, much like stablecoins, run directly on blockchain rails. They are open, verifiable, and interoperable. This is a far cry from the opaque and fragmented back-end systems of today's Wall Street. With crypto, and especially with DeFi, we have a chance to radically upscale our markets to make them more efficient, more liquid, and more integrated across our economy. DeFi infrastructure could modernize the backbone of our financial system, reducing the fees paid by ordinary investors. Tokenized stocks could lower barriers to entry for investing in American companies. And prediction markets can be more broadly brought to bear across the economy, improving our ability to foresee unexpected outcomes and hedge risks accordingly. At the same time, markets do need rules. We at Paradigm believe it is important that crypto regulations be clear, fair, and equitable. We also think it has been an unforced error for the US to be one of the last major developed countries to enact legislation on crypto market structure. In the hopes of providing some hard-won wisdom from our experience in crypto, we released 17 principles for market structure legislation. I wanted to flag 3 of the most important. First, crypto assets should be commodities. Crypto assets are designed to be used, to interact with smart contracts, and in some cases, to pay for on-chain operations, not merely for investment. A token classification rubric based on the Lumens, Gillibrand, ancillary assets approach would be the best way to reflect this principle. Next, any decentralized crypto asset exchange should not be required to register with the CFTC, SEC, or any other regulator. At base, a true DeFi protocol is software. Just as we do not ask Microsoft to register Excel with the SEC just because companies use it to track their IPOs, we should not demand the engineers of DeFi protocols register their software just because others use it to trade. Finally, DeFi should be protected and supported across the globe. No government should be allowed to impose global restrictions on the trading of crypto assets through DeFi. In this way, the US would be resurrecting the work done by our forefathers to protect the freedom of the seas in prior centuries, and, more recently, freedom of the internet. Let me close by stressing the tremendous potential opportunity that lies before you on market structure legislation. Every day, we at Paradigm see new ways that crypto will support economic growth in free markets, from prediction markets and DeFi to tokenized stocks, and even the use of Bitcoin mining to support the electric power grid. We are now even seeing crypto markets emerge for the trading of credits in AI compute. By enacting market structure legislation that is supportive of crypto, supportive of entrepreneurs, supportive of investors, and supportive of consumers, you can blaze the trail to those new markets for all Americans. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Now we'll turn to Mr. Garlinghouse. You are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Scott, Ranking Member Warren, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Brad Garlinghouse. I'm the CEO of Ripple. Ripple has approximately 900 employees across our 15 offices worldwide. We were founded more than a decade ago with a mission to enable the Internet of Value, a world where money moves like information does today. We build software products that power cross-border payments, stablecoins, and digital custody. Ripple helps financial institutions reduce friction, unlock efficiencies, and serve their customers better. These are not abstract concepts. We work every day with banks that rely on our technology to deliver real results in the global economy. Ripple leverages the XRP ledger, a decentralized, battle-tested, open-source blockchain, as well as its native digital asset, XRP, to facilitate payments. XRP is built to enable fast, low-cost, and highly scalable transactions. From the start, Ripple made the deliberate choice to work with policymakers and regulators, not around them. We have taken a compliance-first approach, operating with over 60 payment, service, crypto, and money transmitter licenses domestically and globally. With regard to the topic of this hearing, we believe smart legislation should be based on several core principles. Consumers need protection from fraud and scams. Markets need proper oversight. Bad actors need to be kept in check. And innovation must thrive. A constructive and workable framework for digital assets and stablecoins that achieves these goals will expand access to financial markets, create jobs, strengthen the economy, and put the U.S. on the path to being a global blockchain and crypto leader. For the last decade, the legal and regulatory uncertainty surrounding crypto has prohibited meaningful progress in the U.S. At Ripple, we certainly saw firsthand how the lack of clear rules of the road can be weaponized to target good actors. In turn, the technology, jobs, and tax dollars that go with it are pushed offshore, reducing regulatory oversight and putting consumers at higher risk. This has severely harmed American businesses, investors, and of most concerned, consumers. Ripple was the tip of the spear for this regulation by enforcement campaign and was subject to an enforcement action in 2020. We were the first leading U.S. company to be sued by the SEC. We and many others understood that a loss here would be a death knell for the industry. Fortunately, after 4 years of a hard-fought legal battle, we prevailed. The court ruled in our favor on everything that mattered, including finding that the token XRP is not, in and of itself, a security. Our victory cleared the path for other market participants to fight back. Despite these headwinds, Ripple still prioritizes education and engagement with policymakers and regulators globally. For companies to have the confidence to continue doing business in the United States, Congress should focus on passing principled and smart legislation with these critical goals in mind. First, set clear jurisdictional boundaries for our main financial regulators. Second, establish pathways for companies to build in the U.S. without sacrificing investor or consumer protections. And third, ensure that the U.S. can be a global leader in crypto by taking full advantage of the benefits and efficiencies brought by digital assets and blockchain technologies. The U.S. possesses the world's deepest capital markets, the most advanced technical talent, and a spirit of innovation that has powered our nation since its founding. There is no reason we should not be the undisputed leader in digital assets and blockchain. Over 55 million Americans participate in the crypto economy today, equating to over a $3.3 trillion market cap. A smart regulatory framework for crypto market structure is essential to realize that future and is overdue. Speaking on behalf of the crypto industry, I urge you to prioritize the passage of market structure legislation for digital assets through this committee and the full Senate, to provide the rules and regulations needed to ensure that the U.S. becomes the crypto capital of the world. Once market structure legislation for digital assets becomes law in the United States, this will catalyze a new era of U.S. competitiveness and unlock efficiencies in financial transactions, dramatically helping consumers and businesses alike. Ripple hopes to see this become a reality, and we look forward to working with you to help make this happen. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Up next is the Honorable Timothy Massad at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University.
Good morning, Chair Scott, Ranking Member Warren, members of the committee and staff. Thank you for inviting me today. My name is Timothy Massad. I'm former chairman of the CFTC, former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. The views I express are my own and don't represent the views of the Kennedy School of Government. You know, many of us are familiar with the movie Groundhog Day, in which Bill Murray is condemned to repeat the same day over and over, and he finally escapes the time loop not through external means, but by changing his outlook on life. And I suggest that we're in a similar time loop when it comes to achieving clarity in the regulation of digital assets, and we need to change our outlook. There have been repeated congressional hearings calling for clarity and a series of legislative proposals, each claiming to provide clarity, but there's never been a consensus. And whether it's Lumens-Gillibrand, FIT 21, or the Clarity Act, they all have similar flaws. They rewrite securities laws to create a new category of digital assets that their proponents claim will forever solve the problem. But none will achieve the clarity or the sensible regulation that we need, and each would undermine existing regulation. We need a different approach, and it requires recognizing a few facts. First, this is a technology. It's not an asset class. It will be used in many ways, including in tokenizing securities. Second, whether something in digital form is a security, a commodity, or neither, cannot be easily defined by a paragraph or two in a statute. It depends on what the token represents, whether there is an issuer, whether the transaction is one in which capital is being raised, and so forth. Third, the technology and use cases are evolving rapidly, so we should not lock in definitions that will prove obsolete soon. And fourth, a principal reason for the lack of clarity is our fragmented regulatory system. We have two market regulators, neither of whom has full jurisdiction over the spot market for digital assets that are not securities. The industry has taken advantage of this gap by arguing that most use cases are not securities and can therefore be issued and traded without regulation. That has led to a lack of investor protection. Now, the primary regulatory response to date, court cases that seek to interpret the Howey test, has also not been sufficient. It was a whack-a-mole strategy even when the particulars of a case made sense. But the solution is not for Congress to become the regulator.
Instead, all these factors argue for creating a process by which the SEC and CFTC work together to provide the clarity and the necessary regulation. And legislation should provide them with the proper authority, principles, and flexibility to do so. But legislation that writes detailed rules and creates a binary classification scheme is bound to fail. Former SEC Chair Jay Clayton, who was appointed by President Trump, and I proposed this approach 2 years ago. We said Congress should mandate that the SEC and CFTC work together through a self-regulatory organization or otherwise to develop joint rules that would apply to every intermediary that trades or handles Bitcoin or ETH. Now, that was the jurisdictional hook. It establishes jurisdiction over the market without, as we said, debating classification of each token or Congress pursuing tortured rewriting of existing definitions of securities and commodities. We also said that rewriting existing law might fail to bring clarity and inadvertently undermine decades of regulation and jurisprudence as they apply to traditional securities and commodities markets. Our existing securities and commodities markets are the foundation of the U.S. economy and the envy of the world. Their strength and integrity rests on a regulatory framework that has been gradually and thoughtfully developed over almost 100 years. And therefore, a key principle for market structure legislation must be do no harm to that regulatory framework. The latest market structure proposal, like its predecessors, instead revises the securities laws in various ways that will create more confusion than clarity. For example, it creates a broad exemption for activities described as decentralized finance, which will lead to migration of regulated activity into an unregulated sphere. Decentralized activities may warrant different regulations to achieve our regulatory goals, but not a free pass. It provides an exemption from securities laws for raising funds to build a mature blockchain system, but you don't actually need to build it. You only need to have an intent to do so. The exemption isn't needed, and it will be misused. And finally, it will not even regulate all the crypto activity taking place on centralized platforms today. It will, however, provide many opportunities.
You're about out of time, sir, so.
For smart lawyers to engage in regulatory arbitrage. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. And finally, we have Mr. Richard Painter from the University of Michigan, University of Minnesota School of Law.
Thank you very much, Chairman Scott, and I thank Ranking Member Warren for inviting me to testify today. I urge this committee and the House and the Senate to very carefully look at this bill and consider whether this bill will soundly regulate the cryptocurrency markets, the market structure. We cannot repeat the mistakes of the past. 100 years ago, there were hearings in the House and Senate to regulate the banking industry. And Congressman Louis McFadden of Pennsylvania introduced a bill that eventually became the McFadden Act of 1927. They thought they had the perfect solution to bring banking into the modern age and have the United States be the premier center for banking in the world. The regulatory structure that was framed in 1927, the McFadden Act, was informed largely by lobbyists from the bank industry, and it lasted 3 years. The banks collapsed in 1930. Congress had not regulated the banking industry, even though it said it did. Fast forward to the 1990s, when I was writing in the field of securities regulation, and securities-based swaps and derivatives were coming on the scene. And the argument was made that a securities-based swap is not a security. A stock can be a security, but not a securities-based swap that is based on that stock. And it took years to figure out how to regulate securities-based swaps agreements. Under the Clinton administration, under the Bush administration, we had years of lax regulation, deregulation of the banking sector, laws passed by this Congress, and we saw what happened in 2008. We do not want to make that mistake again. I implore you to carefully look through this bill. Listen to the industry experts who are here today. Listen to Chairman Massad about his experience as a regulator. Consider carefully whether we should be drafting, passing through Congress, a very detailed bill that locks a lot of definitions in stone, or rather take up Chairman Massad's recommendation that we have the SEC and the CFTC, the regulators, work together to respond to evolving market conditions. Consider whether it would make sense to define a stock as a security, but not the tokenization of that stock. Think through these issues. Please do not make the same mistake that this Congress has made so many times before. And last, I want to emphasize how important it is that conflicts of interest of members of the Congress and the President of the United States not influence the regulation of cryptocurrency or any other industry. Under 18 United States Code 208, it is a criminal offense for a United States government official to participate in a government matter that affects their own financial interest. A Treasury Secretary who is regulating cryptocurrency or issuing meme coins and investing in a crypto business would commit a felony. But Congress has exempted itself from that statute. Congress exempted the President of the United States from that statute and the Vice President. That is wrong. We cannot have the people who are in charge of passing legislation and enforcing legislation, implementing legislation, have conflicts of interest with their official responsibilities. That includes every member of the House and Senate. You should be divesting from crypto if you're going to be regulating crypto. And the President of the United States as well. The integrity of our financial system depends upon this. We've watched this movie before. Congress passes laws to regulate the financial sector, and it ends in a disaster because it was not regulated. Please do not repeat that mistake. We don't want to watch this movie again, and we do not want to watch a movie that is a combination of West Wing or the House of Cards and The Big Short. Please, do your jobs, represent us, the American people, protect our financial system so we never see, again, what happened in 2008, 1929, so many times before. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. We'll now turn to our round of questions. We'll offer each member of the committee a generous 5 minutes. If you like, I'll start the questions off. Ms. Mersinger, digital assets and blockchain technology could democratize finance, giving every American, no matter the background, access to financial services at lower costs with greater speed than ever before. To achieve this revolutionary potential, there is widespread agreement from industry leaders to the President and bipartisan members of Congress that we must provide clear rules that foster innovation and protect investors. And listening to you, and frankly, Mr. Levin as well, I think Mr. Levin said we need a fundamentally new model because we're talking about, frankly, a fundamentally new world. It's not new today, but it's new to those of us who are going to pass legislation. And you talked about the importance of the existing laws as we see them are inadequate and, frankly, not applicable to this new opportunity to be the crypto capital of the world. From your perspective, why is regulatory clarity so important, and what are the risks if we fail to provide certainty for innovators and everyday Americans?
Thank you for that question, Senator. Traditional bank regulations are not fit for purpose for digital assets and blockchain technology. Those regulations are meant for centralized intermediaries, and that's not what we're dealing with here. We need a regulatory structure that is fit for purpose. Otherwise, this patchwork of regulations and state laws and the industry trying to piece together what is their regulatory framework doesn't work, and it's going to push and continue to push innovators offshore. The most important thing we can do is create a framework that gives clarity, The status quo doesn't work. We need to be able to have responsible innovation here in the United States. We need a framework that provides customer protections. And we also need to make sure that whatever framework we put in place, that it ensures that U.S. American values are what this new framework, or what this new technology is based on.
Thank you very much. Mr. Levin, there's a common belief that money laundering is easy with crypto, but the truth is, it's not. Blockchain technology creates a permanent, traceable ledger that can help law enforcement catch those bad actors. I've said it before, so I'll say it again. It's far easier to track something that has a digital footprint than something that does not. However, some of my well-intentioned colleagues seem to think that crypto is tailor-made for money laundering, when in reality, it's a whole lot easier for criminals to hide their tracks with cash. What are the most common misconceptions regarding the role of digital assets in illicit finance? And what rules do digital asset market participants already comply with in this space? You talked about, I think it was a couple $100 million that had already been seized by working together. I think the more we illuminate how the industry is already working with law enforcement, the better we understand the digital footprint versus cash.
Thank you for the question, Senator. The way that we see this market is that the majority of activity inside cryptocurrencies and on blockchains is legitimate activity. There are trillions of dollars of payments that are made using stablecoins every year. A lot of that, the vast majority of that, is not illicit activity. The illicit activity that we estimate at Chainalysis is less than 1% of the overall activity that occurs on these blockchains, which is equivalent to what we see in traditional markets, and in fact, oftentimes less than what we see in traditional markets. And so criminals themselves and gangs and whoever else we're dealing with understand that it's not possible to launder vast sums of money in these networks, and that the majority of the activity is legitimate. We do see, though, that when it comes to threats, for example, with fentanyl or pig butchering or terrorist financing, the industry comes together with law enforcement to collaborate on solving these cases. And we at Chainalysis have powered thousands of investigations that have spanned international geographies, cross-national boundaries, to be able to actually capture criminal proceeds in these investigations. The centralized services that have been helpful with this are subject to the AML and BSA obligations and have been from FinCEN guidance in 2013, and so have a very deep experience in actually helping law enforcement in these instances. And it's through that public-private collaboration that we can actually, solve the problems of illicit finance.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cortez, Senator Cortez Basto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for having this important hearing. Let me start with Mr. Massad. Talk a little bit about what should the goal of a market structure legislation be that we're looking at?
I think it needs to set up a process and some principles for achieving clarity and addressing this regulatory gap. The gap is that in our framework, we have no regulator of the spot market for anything that's not a security. So we need to fill that. And we need to bring some clarity to this question of when is the use of digital technology turn something into a security or a commodity. But that's much more complicated, if you will, than simply writing in, a single definition. And that's why I advocate a process. That's why Jay Clayton and I advocated more of a process of bringing the SEC and the CFTC together. You don't necessarily have to merge them, but we need to have them work together on this.
Thank you. And Ms. Mersinger, would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree that we need a framework that's going to work for the industry. We need clear lines of jurisdiction here. And I totally agree with the SEC and the CFTC working together. In fact, they could do that right now, and they are doing that right now, working together to provide what clarity they can. But we still need legislation to oversee the spot market, and as Mr. Massad said.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you this as well, and maybe, Mr. Massad, let me start with you again. I have heard from my state's a security administrator and many of them across the country about the paramount importance of preserving states' powers in federal market structure legislation. Can you talk about why that is important?
Yes, I think it is important because the state securities authorities have always played a critical role in our system. And again, I think you're going to hear a lot of comments today suggesting this is this whole new world and so forth. It is a technology. And we got to remember what we have going on are still, most of this activity is going through centralized intermediaries. It's not just happening on chain. So I think we still need the resources of the states as well as the enforcement resources of the SEC and the CFTC to bring to bear.
Thank you. Mr. Levin, thank you. By the way, you did some great work with Caesar's Palace. I thank you for the work that you've done. I appreciate it. And for that reason, I understand we're all concerned about the scams and the fraud that could occur, that quite honestly always occurs with some sort of new technology or something happening at the federal level. Our goal here is to make sure we're protecting our consumers and giving the regulators and law enforcement the tools in the private sector to go after that and stop that. Can I ask you, what are the biggest obstacles to identifying and recovering ransom payments or stolen crypto funds?
Thank you for the question, Senator. The biggest barrier that we find when we're looking for money that is being stolen or has been extorted through ransom is that money can move to foreign jurisdictions where there can be non-compliant centralized entities that actually hold cryptocurrency on behalf of those illicit flows. And that's where it's really important for the United States to be able to work across different geographies to be able to prevent the laundering of that activity in foreign jurisdictions.
And would you say that state and local law enforcement and regulators already have the tools they need to address those the scams?
I would say, Senator, that we are still in the infancy of state and local agencies actually having the capabilities to be able to go after these types of crime. There are instances in certain jurisdictions where the state and local enforcement agencies actually do have capabilities at their disposal, but we have found that actually there's a technology barrier to entry. And so us at Chainalysis, we've been pioneering a lot more new technology powered by AI to actually help state and local agencies get a hold of easier insights to these types of crimes so that they can go after this activity.
What is it in the market structure regulation that we're looking at that we need to be cognizant about to ensure that law enforcement, whether it's federal, state, or local, has the tools they need?
I think it starts, Senator, with the actual regulators to actually have the tools in place to monitor the publicly available information and proactively go after the types of threats that we need rather than overly relying on a reporting structure that we've had in traditional markets.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've listened with great interest today, and here's what I hear you saying. The four folks to my left, I hear you saying that digital assets are different. Digital assets hold great promise. Digital assets need special rules. I agree with that. The obvious question is, what should those rules be, and to what extent should we allow you to draft them? I've also heard some of you say that digital assets represent the next generation of the internet. Well, we let the current generation of the internet draft their own rules, and frankly, it looks like what we got as a result looks like somebody knocked over a urine sample. Congress can't even agree on basic legislation dealing with privacy on the internet. How the hell are we going to tackle this? But I hear what you're saying. I hear Mr. Painter, as usual, if you follow him on social media, you know, all politicians are crooks. Very helpful. I want to direct most of my questions to Professor Massad. Is that how you say your name?
Massad.
Mr. Massad. I'm really worried we're going to get this wrong. We don't know, we in Congress and our staffs don't know as much as the professionals in digital assets know. And I don't see how we can possibly catch up. Tell me more about your idea of having the SEC. Well, first, I don't want to run out of time here, but why is the digital assets industry so scared of being regulated by the SEC?
Well, I think we need to step back, Senator.
Briefly, please.
They don't want everything treated as a security because they don't want that entire framework to apply. But that's also because the SEC did fail to try to customize its rules to adapt for this technology, and it should do that. And you've got leadership at the agencies now who are working on those things.
You're suggesting that we turn to two of our agencies, one of which is the SEC, and say, you have expertise. Before we take a crack at a bill, you come up with a bill, with rules, with regulations. Tell us how to do this. Because I hear you saying in some cases digital assets are commodities, in some cases they're securities.
Congress needs to fill the gap, which is if it's not a security, who's going to create a regulatory framework for it? So you do need to fill that. But these questions about exactly which is when is it a security, when is it not a security, how do we customize the rules, what should we do about DeFi, a lot of that should really be left to the agencies. You could establish some principles, but I wouldn't write detailed rules.
Have you looked, Professor, at Congressman Hill's legislation?
I have in detail.
What do you think?
I think it's got a lot of problems. I think it's 236 pages of regulatory arbitrage opportunities for creative lawyers, and I used to be one that did that kind of stuff.
Made a lot of money, did you?
I did, but...
Yeah. Mr. Painter, do you think Senator Gillibrand is a crook?
No, and I do not think all politicians are crooks.
And why did you call her a crook?
I did not call her a crook. Now, Ms. Senator, you need to focus on this bill.
Right,
you're doing this again. You did it the last hearing. You need to read the bill.
Role in stablecoin regulation, $217,000 in crypto donations. You tweeted that.
Yes, I do.
And then you said, the crypto industry is buying Congress and the White House. This won't end well. Why do you think the crypto industry is buying Senator Gillibrand?
I said, look at the campaign contributions from this industry.
You think they bought her?
No, I said, look at the campaign contributions.
You said they bought her. Do you think they bought her?
Senator, you need to focus on this bill instead of trying to distort my Twitter.
Last time, one of my
you
colleagues
were quoting what a Marxist in Chicago said about
her. And what evidence do you have that she's a crook?
I said there is massive amount of campaign contributions coming into this Congress from the crypto industry.
Do you want to apologize to Senator Gillibrand?
I do not want you to have to apologize for passing legislation that destroys our economy. You are distorting what I said, just like you did in the last hearing. You're wasting everybody's time, Senator.
You're a whack job.
Senator,
you are wasting.
Well, I think we are
next level whack job.
I think we
are.
Is
this middle school, Senator?
Senators and witness. Thank you both.
I think you should apologize, Senator.
I think, Senator, you're wasting our time. This is not middle school.
Thank you for your participation. I will say that Senator Smith is next. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, not so long ago, I think you could safely describe most individual investors in digital asset markets as enthusiasts, but that has changed a lot. over the last few years as digital assets have become more mainstream. And I think the topic of this conversation today, looking at what sort of a regulatory framework we need for digital assets, is very important.
Jamie.
And it's important that we don't provide just a stamp of legitimacy over this sector, but we are actually providing the kind of consumer protections that people need. Investors should be protected from fraud, from misleading information, from self-dealing, and from conflicts of interest by those that purport to be representing them. They should be protected from unfair and rigged markets. And those protections are going to be good for investors, but they're also going to be good for the market. So, Mr. Massad, I want to get at some of what this proposed market structure legislation should look at. And we have kind of as our the legislation that's out there, the Clarity Act. So I'm going to just try to get at some of the issues in the Clarity Act. So as I understand it, the Clarity Act would prevent any digital asset from being regulated if it is represented as a collectible or as art or as something that has inherent value or utility or significance beyond its mere existence as a digital asset. Do I have that right?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so that seems like a pretty big loophole to me, and I want to just dive into this a little bit. So if a cryptocurrency, for example, was launched by a social media influencer, could that, in your view, have some inherent value and therefore be exempted? What about, let's say, a meme coin that might get you invited to dinner with the president? Would that have potential inherent value?
Yes.
Tesla is worth more than several of the world's largest automakers. If it were to issue a crypto stock token, would that have inherent value?
Well, that certainly would. That would be also exempted as a security. So that should be still regulated as a security.
As a security, right, which is sort of the underlying challenge, as you pointed out a moment ago. So I mean, can you imagine a crypto asset that wouldn't have some inherent value?
Well, this is the problem. It's unclear exactly what would be categorized as digital commodities under this definition. A lot of people say it would be these native tokens like Bitcoin. I would think about it this way. Most trading today occurs through centralized intermediaries. It does not occur through these decentralized exchanges. Those centralized intermediaries list several hundred tokens. The question is, how many of those would be regulated by this? And I think it would only be a handful, and that's a real problem.
Well, exactly. Mike, this seems to me like a loophole that you could drive a truck through.
Yes.
And I don't think that that is an accident as this legislation has been developed. Let me touch on another issue. I think we've heard it today. Crypto industry and its promoters are sort of branding digital assets as something new, as innovative, as revolutionary, and therefore they need some sort of new or bespoke regulatory framework because the established rules for protecting investors and guaranteeing the freeness and fairness of markets don't apply. And I'm not arguing that there aren't some specific things that we need to address because of the nature of these assets. But here's an example of this. Under the Clarity Act, it would allow a crypto company to raise up to, I think it's $300 million from retail investors over 4 years, as long as they would be exempted from complying with SEC registration and disclosure rules, up to, even if they're raising up to $300 million in from retail investors. Is that, do I have that right?
Yes, there's a new exemption for capital raising for building what's called a mature blockchain system.
That's right.
It does require some disclosure, but it's otherwise an exemption from
SEC
from registration.
So if a regular company was required, would be required to disclose to the SEC how they're spending the money that they raise.
Yes, I mean, the challenge, the problem with that exemption is you don't actually have to build the mature blockchain system. You just have to have the intent to do it.
You just have to have the intent to do it, but you could use that money for, I mean, what would stop you from using it to buy a house in, the Virgin Islands?
Well, conceivably there could be a lawsuit against you for misleading information. But, you know, if you had
That's
a
sort of like
reasonable...
an after the fact.
Yeah, that's after the fact.
Right, exactly. Well, so this is, and I know I'm out of time here. I just want to close by saying this is my concern, is that it's not really a new regulatory regime at all. It actually is sort of continuing the status quo that has landed us in some pretty significant
Well,
problems.
I think I think the problem with the act is it's undermining the existing
Correct.
regime. We do need to customize some rules.
Yes.
But this isn't a good way to do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Chairman Scott, and thank you for doing this hearing. You know, it's something Mr. Massad said, which I thought was fascinating, was that we've had times that we could have passed market structure regulation and Congress hasn't done it. There hasn't ever been a market structure regulation bill marked up by the Banking Committee. So I'm just not sure where that came from. That there was this idea that market structure regulation had been attempted before. It's never been attempted. But Mr. Massad, just for your sake, I just want to clarify a couple things that you said to make sure you meant to say what you said. Did you call Bitcoin a native token?
Yeah, it's often referred to as a native. In other words, Bitcoin and ETH are referred to as native tokens of their blockchain.
So you're saying Ether and Bitcoin are the same?
Well, I'm classifying both of them as what you call native tokens of the blockchain.
So you're saying that a native token is how you would describe Bitcoin. I just want to be clear of that.
It's a term that's used to describe when you have a blockchain and you have the token that allows you to use that blockchain, that's often called a native token, yes.
Got it. And therein lies exactly why we need to have this market structure regulation. Because the idea that we would turn over this industry to some bureaucrat working at some agency is insane. Because that would make it so that no American company would ever invest in a digital asset company in the United States of America when you had people who are just completely not lacking the fundamental technical base. This reminds me of the Facebook ad where the little old lady's sitting there taking pictures off a physical wall and the guy saying, yeah, none of this works this way. Bitcoin is a commodity. So there was a lot of talk about meme coins and NFTs. So let me ask you this follow-up question.
Chairman, Senator, if I may just say,
I get to ask the question.
I was the guy who declared Bitcoin a commodity.
This is the great part about being senator. I get to ask you the questions.
Okay.
So were you prohibited by law to cooperating with the SEC?
No.
Why didn't you?
I did.
So no, but you just said that what we should do is have the CFTC and the SEC work together.
Yes.
Why didn't you do that?
Well, when I was there, I did that, sir.
So
what
then
I'm saying is
you're
Congress,
saying that
Congress shouldn't try to be the regulator.
No, hold on a
sir.
second. You're saying you solved all these problems when you were at the CFTC with the SEC.
No,
so
but
then why
we
do we
solved
need
the
any-
swap problems.
Okay, so you didn't solve all the problems. So you want us to have the SEC and the CFTC work together. But what you really want is you want Congress to abdicate its responsibilities to unelected
Not at all.
bureaucrats,
Not
such
at all.
as yourself.
As with Jay Clayton, a Republican appointee, he agrees with me on this.
Are you a baseball fan? I assume you're a Red Sox fan up there at Harvard?
No,
Right?
I live in Washington, sir.
Oh, geez, no, Pete. All right, so is a baseball card a security?
No.
What's the difference between a baseball card and a meme coin?
Sir,
No, just what's the difference? How would you explain it to me technically?
they're both, you could classify them both as collectibles.
Is it the government's rule to prevent me from paying $5 million for a 1952 Mickey Mantle?
I think people should be allowed to invest in whatever they want to invest in, sir.
So then, does that mean meme coins as well?
If they want to buy and sell meme coins, that's fine. But
So
we
you don't
should
think
have
that
a
should-
regulatory framework for certain financial instruments.
No.
We've
I'm
learned
talking
over
about-
the
I'm talking
years
about meme
that that's
coins.
useful.
I'm talking about meme coins. Do you think that the government, the SEC or the CFTC should regulate meme coins?
I think we should have an investor protection framework over this, over financial instruments.
I'm gonna
If
take
we
that as
want to
a-
decide
so you're
that they're
saying yes?
not financial instruments.
Are you saying yes? It's just simple because again we only have 5. The chairman's very strict. Only lets us have 5 minutes.
I understand that, Senator.
So
but
you're
I
saying
think
yes
you'd-
or no?
I
It's
think you
simple.
might appreciate that it's a more complicated issue than that. At least I would hope you
should
do.
it's not complicated. Should the SEC or the CFTC regulate meme coins? It's
The
a
SEC
yes
has
or no.
already said it won't, and that's fine with me.
Okay.
But I'm happy to create a category that's neither a security or a commodity.
Should we include baseball cards in that as well?
No, I don't think we're
Why not?
talking about baseball cards here, sir.
What's the difference?
Because we're talking about a particular technology of tokenization and
because
blockchains. That's
here's-
the focus
here's-
of this
here's what I
matter.
want
We're
my
not
col-
talking
here-
about anything that people trade.
Here's what I want my colleagues to understand. How many business people work at the SEC and the CFTC? How many entrepreneurs? How many people who started companies work there?
I don't have that information, sir.
Let's say none. And then let me just finish this with Mr. Painter with just something that you said, which was also equally staggeringly insane. You said that Congress should not own crypto, correct?
So members of Congress should not be investing in the crypto industry.
So you said that you shouldn't own crypto. You shouldn't own crypto.
You know,
That's not
it is
complicated.
very clear if you have your own meme coin. I don't know, Senator, whether you have your own meme coin.
Time out.
It said
you shouldn't own crypto.
I said you shouldn't be investing in the crypto industry if you have your own crypto trading platform.
So I shouldn't own baseball cards either. Because Congress regulates professional baseball.
No, I said.
Am I allowed to have money in a bank account?
You should be allowed to do what executive branch officials to do, and it would be a criminal offense for an executive branch official under laws passed by this Congress to regulate the crypto industry while holding an interest in a crypto firm. That is just a law, and Congress passed that law and imposed it on everyone else except for members of Congress.
You want to finish your thought on this?
Yeah, my point is, for some reason, I don't understand why, maybe it's just a generational problem. It seems like the crypto industry, that people of a certain generation are just afraid of it. And that fear and lack of knowledge and having the humility to know that you just don't know the technological issues here has made this industry just reticent on understanding that there's a whole new world. And by the way, the 1946 securities laws should not be dictating what we're doing today. And I hope that my colleagues understand it. This is a generational issue. It's not a Democrat versus Republican issue. And if you took the time to just understand the technology, I think it would be easier for us to move forward.
Senator Warnock, you have 6 minutes.
I was going to ask you, Brother Chairman.
Brother Senator, I knew you were going to ask me the question. You're also a pastor, so you get 3 closes.
Thank you so much. I may not need it. Actually.
Thank you.
As this committee begins
Senator,
work
get the rest of the time.
as this committee begins work on bipartisan legislation to provide certainty and clarity to the crypto market, it's critical that any bill we advance provides strong consumer protections. And this is why I'm incredibly concerned about the rise in so-called meme coins. In February, the SEC published a staff statement on meme coins, warning that they expose amateur investors to, quote, rug pull and pump and dump schemes. Mr. Massad, what do you think the effect of this staff memo will be on investors in meme coins, and do you think the SEC will bring civil actions or enforcement against any of these scammers?
Senator, thank you for the question. I think the SEC has said that these are not securities, and I would agree with that. The issue then becomes if they're being listed on platforms such as centralized exchanges where people are trading Bitcoin, what should we do about that? People say we want to regulate those platforms insofar as they trade Bitcoin. We should either say they can't trade other things that aren't regulated, or whatever they trade has to be subject to the same regulations. I think in terms of immediate effects, you have these things being traded, and people can misunderstand them, can get defrauded. I don't expect the SEC or anybody else to take actions about that unless it was really a very, very serious case of fraud, and that would be up to the Justice Department.
So, these issues, I think it's important that we recognize that these aren't theoretical arguments. They impact real people in their actual lives. And analysis of coins issued on Pump.Fund, a popular meme coin generating site, indicated 60% of users on the platform lost money, with 1,700 wallets suffering losses that exceeded $100,000. What do you need, Mr. Massad, what do we need to see in a Senate bill to protect consumers from meme coin scams without sacrificing innovation in the market? I think we don't have to embrace the false choice between innovation and giving consumers reasonable protection. What would you like to see in a Senate bill?
Well, what I'd like to see is consistency between what we allow these centralized exchanges that are trading Bitcoin to trade and what's subject to the bill. In other words, if we're going to regulate those centralized exchanges, when we should do that, and they shouldn't be allowed to list things that aren't then subject to all those same regulations. And right now, the bill is very inconsistent in that respect because it excludes those meme coins from digital commodities, but it doesn't prohibit the listing of those meme coins on these very same exchanges.
So I look forward to working with my Republican colleagues as we think about these issues. This year alone, President Trump and his family have launched a meme coin, a stable coin, and a governance token. The Trump family has also indicated that they may offer a crypto wallet as well as other crypto products. They're quite active in this space. Mr. Painter, how does President Trump's promotion of cryptocurrency, including his meme coin and his family's company, intersect with his official duties and his administration's policies?
If Donald Trump were the Treasury Secretary and regulating crypto and had those interests, he would be guilty of a felony under 18 United States Code 208, the statute I referenced before, which Congress has passed and imposed on every employee of the United States government except for the members of Congress, the president, and the vice president. And this is just unacceptable to have a president who is in charge of the regulatory apparatus for any industry, including crypto, while he has such a vast interest in crypto, including a meme coin that I understand has lost somewhere around 70% of its value since Inauguration Day, I believe. I don't know who lost money on that, but I think I know who made money.
Yeah. Quickly, yes or no? So do you believe that the president having an outsized role in so many digital asset offerings will lead to fair and innovative markets? I think
No, it will lead to a lack of confidence in our regulatory system. Just as like this Congress, everyone's receiving campaign contributions from the crypto industry and voting on this bill, and then if a witness comes here and disagrees with you, you call him a whack job. I mean, this is embarrassing, what's going on in this town.
I agree that President Trump's crypto corruption distorts the digital asset marketplace, and writing a bill with a corruption caveat for the president sends a clear message that Congress is not serious about addressing corruption, which we know undermines investors' faith in capital markets. His corruption creates an unfair market that stifles innovation because his investors justifiably do not want to compete against the President of the United States. Ironically, for those who want to see us do something on market structure, it seems to me that that's not a fair market or a free market. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Amen.
You see, he said amen to the preacher.
Amen.
I have so many comments for you, Senator. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Lest you run over your time by 60 seconds, we will move on to Senator Haggerty's next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate the leadership that you've demonstrated in this important area. And I also want to commend you and thank my colleagues here on the committee for your actions to support our recent Genius legislation.
Yes, sir.
That provides much needed regulatory certainty in the area of payment stablecoins that I think we desperately needed. And I've also been amazed and very pleased in the wake of that to see the energy and the enthusiasm behind market structure legislation. And I'm very pleased to see this esteemed group of folks here today that are ready to testify to help us with that. For too long, the lack of intelligible definitions, jurisdiction, and pathways to registration from our regulators have forced digital asset innovation beyond our borders. One of the saddest things that I heard as I came into the Senate talking to members of the industry with the brilliant people were taking up new jobs and new positions in countries other than our own because they felt they couldn't survive here. Why is that? Because in the void of regulatory framework, the SEC and others had stepped into that void and done one of the most pernicious things that we ever see here in Washington, the so-called enforcement by regulation, or regulation by enforcement, I'm sorry. That creates massive uncertainty. That has lent itself to destroying the possibility of America leading in this incredibly innovative sector, and I'm so pleased to see us moving back in a new direction. So, Mr. Robinson, I'd like to start with you, if I could. In your testimony, you discussed the importance of limiting developer liability so that developers can freely build applications here in the United States. And to be clear for my colleagues, without this sort of limitation, developers could be held legally liable for the actions of third parties with whom they have no relationship. So, Mr. Robinson, would you talk with us about how you perceive the Senate's role in establishing market structure regulation that would effectively address this policy issue?
Thank you, Senator Haggerty. This is an issue that's very important to me as a software developer myself, and I care about this a lot, and a lot of my fellow engineers in the industry have been very concerned about the potential for regulatory actions going after software developers just for publishing code. We think it is very important that the Senate include a protection shielding developers from liability, and in fact, the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, which was adopted in the House as part of the Clarity Act, does address exactly that, and I would encourage the Senate to include similar language in the bill that they pass.
I appreciate that. Ms. Mersinger, I'd like to turn to you. And here I'd like to talk about the jurisdiction with the CFTC and the SEC, an area that you know a great deal about. And we're trying to delineate and establish the appropriate regulatory authorities between the two agencies, the CFTC and the SEC. And I'd just like for you to explain to my colleagues and for this audience today why it's so important that we ensure jurisdictional harmony between these organizations.
Thank you for that question. To your point about regulation through enforcement, when the only regulatory actions that are occurring are lawsuits and legal settlements, there's no clarity, and you have a situation where those who want to follow the law and do the right thing, one, are worried to innovate here in the United States, but they also are not sure where to go to follow the rules. Mm-hmm. And so we have to have clarity around what is the right regulator and who is overseeing these markets. And from my experience in the CFTC, one of the things I'll point out is the CFTC has broad anti-manipulation and anti-fraud enforcement authority over commodity spot markets, but they do not have regulatory jurisdiction over those same markets. So the CFTC could only come in after fraud or manipulation had occurred. There was no regulatory oversight. So providing that regulatory framework so that you have a regulator overseeing these activities will help prevent regulation through enforcement, because you will have the examiners, you will have the regulators looking at these businesses and ensuring that they're following the laws and the regulations, rather than having to come in after something bad has happened and bring enforcement cases.
Got it. Thank you. Mr. Garlinghouse, I'm going to turn to you with a related question. We're trying to calibrate an appropriate regulatory framework here for the digital assets arena. One of the concerns I have is, rather than engaging with technologists, with people in the industry who are actually at the cutting edge of innovation, lawmakers, regulators could actually try to force the digital assets markets into outdated regulatory frameworks. I think that would stifle innovation, that would put us at a great disadvantage. And as we think about it, there are certain factors that are unique to the digital assets ecosystem. And what factors would you emphasize that we focus on as we think about an appropriate regulatory framework moving forward?
Thank you, Senator. I think there are unique aspects that need to be thoughtful and applied potentially uniquely to any legislation around this. That said, I do think that where Mr. Massad and I disagree is that depending upon an SEC and CFTC to work together assumes good faith appointed officials in doing that. What we have seen previously is the SEC actually sowed confusion in the marketplace. They took contradictory positions. Under Chairman Gensler, they took actually contradictory positions in different court cases, which actually created more confusion. Yeah. And so you had federal judges saying things like the SEC was being arbitrary and capricious in their application of the law. You had federal judges saying that they were not following a, quote, faithful allegiance to the law. And so my concern in depending upon an unelected appointee to make those decisions is that it assumes a good faith actor. And I think what we saw in this most recent SEC was just a war against the industry at large without a consistent application of that law.
Well, I think we need to put in place a sufficient framework so that we don't have to rely on the goodwill of a particular regulator, but that it's clear to them our intention. So thank you all. Appreciate the entire panel being here today. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Haggerty. On behalf of the chairman, I now recognize myself. We need to make sure that any new legislation to regulate crypto market doesn't do more harm than good. And there are a couple of areas where I think we need to be very careful not to make things worse. First, we cannot pass any legislation that eats away at the SEC's current jurisdiction to regulate traditional securities. Now, Mr. Massad, you were chair of the CFTC and you were Assistant Secretary for Treasury for Financial Stability. Could market structure legislation make it possible to structure a non-crypto product so that it dodges our security laws? Use something like Tesla stock as an example.
Yes, it certainly could. If you, for example, provide an exemption for activity on decentralized trading protocols, and that's a very broad exemption, then you could tokenize Tesla stock and have it traded on that protocol, and it could be exempt then from 34 Act trading requirements at least.
So in effect, we start to repeal the SEC as we've had it for traditional.
It could certainly undermine their authority substantially.
It's critical that any crypto regulation bill we pass does not have massive unintended consequences. And I think those are unintended consequences for everyone, but consequences that would reach far beyond the crypto market and take a tire iron to the $120 trillion golden egg that is America's capital markets. So I think it's an important note we have to do in regulation here. There's another problem that we've got to face, and that's corruption. President Trump has made it impossible to have a conversation about crypto legislation that does not address his most successful grift. According to a recent New York Times analysis of the president's financial disclosure, crypto is now the biggest source of President Trump's wealth. In the past 7 months, he has become the most successful president in history at making money off his time in the Oval Office, and he's done it using crypto. Now, Mr. Painter, if Congress passes a bill creating a new federal regulatory framework for the crypto market, what will happen to the crypto market? Is it likely to grow?
It will grow substantially.
Okay, and what will that do to the value of President Trump's meme coin?
It will make him very rich, even richer than he already is.
And what about the value of his stable coin and his son's Bitcoin mining operation and his family's crypto holdings?
The same. The Trump family will become very, very wealthy as the prices go up and the bubble rises.
So if we create a new federal regulatory framework for the crypto market, the president and his family stand to make a whole lot more money. So, Mr. Painter, if the president and his family own billions of dollars in crypto, if Congress passes a crypto bill, who will claim the power to appoint and the power to fire the regulators that will implement whatever new rules are put in place governing crypto holdings?
The President of the United States, and he is now also claiming the power to fire the members of independent commissions, and that will include the Commodities Futures Trading Commission and the SEC.
Okay, so you were President Bush's chief ethics counsel. Can you think of another time in American history when a president of the United States held such power over regulators, the very regulators who would determine the value of the president's own net worth?
Never. We have never had, since the Civil War, a president of the United States with substantial financial holdings that are conflicted with any official duties. This is unheard of. And now it's not just real estate, but Donald Trump recently is into crypto, even though he said that it was a scam just a few years ago. He's now into crypto and into social media industries he did not have in his first administration.
Well, we need clear and strong rules for the crypto market, but the proposals I've seen so far undercut the investor protections in our traditional capital markets. They harm our national security, and they supercharge the value of President Trump's crypto grift. We need crypto regulations that actually regulate the industry. We don't need another giveaway to a handful of billionaire insiders. And with that, I conclude and not only call on Senator Britt, but hand the gavel to you.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member. I appreciate the chairman for holding this hearing today and being serious about creating a framework for digital assets in the United States, and certainly appreciate all of you and your willingness to be here with us and testify on this important topic. Obviously, it's a very complicated issue, a lot of moving parts. We've seen some fireworks today. One of the primary points is just around definitions. You know, how do we properly define digital commodity versus digital security, and what does that actually mean for the role of our regulators? We know digital asset securities can share many characteristics with traditional securities, but they're not inherently the same, and regulation needs to reflect that. Much like applying, traditional regulatory framework to a new decentralized finance system, it just doesn't work. I'm concerned about the compliance burdens for developers and for startups and how we actually strike the right balance between the two. I've seen firsthand what happens to our small businesses and our small financial institutions when you have overregulation, and it becomes unsustainable. So my first question is actually for Ms. Mersinger. We are dealing with a rapidly evolving industry here, and we can't predict every change, right? So how do we create a framework that puts up the proper guardrails and the clarity that we actually need today without locking in rules that quickly become outdated? I'd love your thoughts on that and kind of your thoughts on how we approach that.
Thank you for that question. And I will say, as a former commissioner at CFTC, I believe this is a reason why there is so much interest in having the CFTC as a regulator over the digital spot market. It's because they have a principles-based regulatory regime, which provides that flexibility. So as technology changes, those companies, those startups, those small businesses can still operate and fulfill their regulatory duties, but not be subject to a prescriptive regulatory framework that locks into place the technology and the systems or the processes they're using when it's put in place. So I think the most important thing you can do is have principles-based regulatory regime and prevent having prescriptive regulations around this industry.
Are there kind of permanent and durable mechanisms that would actually encourage innovation? I guess my question, has the regulatory sandbox been beneficial in this regard, and kind of sort of how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been talk about sandboxes being a helpful tool.
Okay.
Both the SEC and the CFTC have exemptive authority that they can use.
Mm-hmm.
There's the ability to use staff no action letters and relief. So there are.
Would you recommend that?
Yeah, there are a lot of tools in place that they can use to still oversee and regulate the space, but not stifle the innovation that is occurring and developing.
I'm going to shift gears real quick in my remaining time. Mr. Levin, I've heard the narrative that digital asset transactions are completely anonymous and beyond the reach of law enforcement. I disagree with this. As with any financial instrument or new technology, there's always going to be bad actors. And we should, of course, where any loophole exists, we should find it and close it and not enable illicit activity. But from my understanding, blockchain technology actually can offer an enhanced level of security, perhaps even more resistant to manipulation. And transactions on the blockchain offer a unique ability for tracing and tracking, including analyzing trends on the ledger. So, Mr. Levin, can you speak to this, both to the narrative that digital assets are untraceable and to what type of tools are available to identify and to actually combat bad actors?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. This is exactly the business that we at Chainalysis have been building for the last 10 years. We build tools and technology that actually allows law enforcement, regulators, businesses to actually track and trace cryptocurrency with the relevant context about where to get additional information if there is some sort of investigation or some sort of disruption action that needs to happen. I would say that there are two levels of tooling that is worthwhile the committee understanding, which is, one is there are actual forensic tools that are being used in investigations where you are looking at very specific transactions of interest that have been flagged either through regulatory reporting or investigations. And then also the blockchain actually allows for a much more macro view of trends and threats that are persisting against society. And so you could actually investigate ransomware as a whole threat to the United States of America and look at the entire supply chain that causes ransomware to have impact on our communities and find where there is an opportunity for actual disruption of that supply chain for the threat.
Thank you so much, and I am out of time, but would love to continue this conversation with you, in particular, how we empower our state and local law enforcement with the tools they need so that they're better equipped in this regard. So thank you so much, and with that, I will recognize Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Senator Britt, and thank all of you for your testimony here today. Mr. Massad, it's great to see you again. This time in front of the full committee. And Senator Britt's question is a good place to pick up because in Baltimore City, a number of years ago, you may remember, we experienced a ransomware attack. It was one of the earlier ones that became well known, and the attackers wanted to be paid in crypto. And what we've seen with respect to ransomware attacks is that they do, for the most part, use crypto as their currency of choice, and we've also seen that with respect to entities that engage in sanctions evasion. So I think there's a need to be very clear that decentralized finance is fully covered by our anti-money laundering and know your customer regulatory regimes. As we heard, there has been improvement in blockchain technology, and blockchain technology does have some of these important features that could make it easier to track transactions. But the fact also is that about $2 billion was lost in crypto security incidents in the first quarter of 2025 alone, nearly the entirety of what was lost in all of 2024. We have crypto mixers, cross-chain bridges, and other methods to obscure the movement of cryptocurrency. So it's not enough simply to state that we're going to ensure that crypto is subject to BSA and other regulations. We need effective supervision and enforcement. Can you talk briefly about what challenges you see today to getting from where we are to that kind of enforcement that would be necessary to oversee them on parity with the current laws?
Certainly, Senator. First of all, I would suggest we think about what takes place on-chain and what takes place off-chain. Mr. Levin, I have great respect for the work of Chainalysis. They're focusing on activity on-chain, and they do a good job, but we have to remember they're only able to identify illicit actors where there's a known identifiable address, and there could be a lot of other activity happening. So I think we need better monitoring by issuers of digital assets, such as stablecoin issuers, need to be monitoring the chain, need to be applying risk analysis techniques and so forth. With respect to off-chain activity, though, that's where a lot of illicit activity takes place. It takes place through centralized intermediaries. And what Chainalysis does doesn't really reach that. And that's why we need an entire regulatory framework around these entities. We need to prevent wash trading. We need to make sure they're doing a good job on beneficial ownership. And finally, I think we need to give the Treasury Department more tools to enforce sanctions, to enforce money laundering. And there were a number of proposals made about 2 years ago that would enhance its authorities because digital assets are bearer instruments and they can be transferred, on blockchains. And so I think the Treasury Department needs greater authority to impose sanctions and other measures on offshore entities that might be harboring this activity. And there's a variety of other things I'd be happy to discuss with you.
I appreciate that. want to turn to you, Mr. Painter, and you indicate in your testimony and your writings that the avoidance of even the appearance of a conflict of interest, the appearance of corruption, is critical to ensuring public integrity of the crypto markets, and I agree with that statement. Would you agree that when Eric Trump visited the UAE shortly in advance of President Trump's visit there and helped broker a transaction where the UAE state-owned firm MGX executed a $2 billion transaction in the Trump family stablecoin, that creates the appearance, at least, of a conflict of interest?
It's terrible, and it may be a lot more than the appearance of conflict of interest.
And the president, of course, followed up a visit of his own there and made a deal with a separate UAE state-owned company that allowed the transfer of very sensitive U.S. chips and AI technology to that other company called G42. It turns out that the chair of G42, the company that received the sort of crown jewels of US AI technology, and the chair of the company MGX that Eric Trump did the deal with, is the same person. Would you agree that that also creates the stench of corruption?
It certainly does.
I think it's pretty straightforward as well for anybody looking at the facts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blunt Rochester.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses. I really welcome this hearing and the opportunity for serious, sustained engagement in digital asset market structure. This is enormously complex and could fundamentally reshape the bones of our economy. We've already seen what happens when digital finance grows without guardrails. The collapse of FTX, Terra Luna, and Celsius wiped out billions in consumer savings and exposed glaring regulatory gaps. When regulation lags innovation, real people get hurt. At a time of rising prices and growing wealth inequality, I'm sure that we can all agree that the last thing we need is to rush or have a poorly designed market structure bill. And at the same time, I strongly believe in innovation. That's why I joined Senators Moreno and he to introduce the Bipartisan Deploying American Blockchains Act. And I support a bipartisan, thoughtful, transparent, and inclusive process, especially for legislation that could shape the future of U.S. capital markets. My first question is for you, Mr. Painter. What are the risks if Congress moves forward too quickly in legislating without broad input and clear understanding of market consequences? And how do we ensure that this process produces a bipartisan framework that can stand the test of time?
The risk is that we repeat the experience of regulating the banks in the 1920s and the depression that followed, 10 years of depression. The risk is that we repeat what happened in 2008 when campaign contributions poured into Congress from the securities-based swap industry, elsewhere in the financial services industry, and we had decades of deregulation. The economy collapsed. Millions of American families losing their homes, people unemployed. We've been through this again and again. And this Congress needs to get it right this time and carefully read this bill and listen to witnesses, including the witnesses who might not disagree. And instead of the personal attacks that I've experienced today, some dignity from this Senate, care in drafting this bill and thinking about the American people you represent. We do not want another economic collapse caused by deregulation of the financial services sector. And I want to ask you all, do you understand the bill? Have you listened to all sides? And are you willing to allow the regulators to use their expertise to watch what's going on in this sector, as Chairman Massad has suggested that you should? Please, we don't want to go through those experiences again.
Thank you, Mr. Painter. You show why this is so vital that we get this right, because it will touch all of us. Mr. Massad, some proposals would let crypto companies decide for themselves which rules apply and which regulator they'd answer to. And that sounds a lot like the businesses picking their own cop on the beat, so to speak. How should Congress design a system that applies the rules fairly and earns the public's trust?
Well, I think Congress should think in terms of principles, not trying to write detailed rules, because I think those can quickly become obsolete. I think number two, Congress does need to fill the gap in regulation that we've talked about with respect to the use of this technology for things that aren't securities. But, you know, to your point about the problems here, I mean, the problem with a lot of the proposals is that they try to write detailed rules that I don't think are going to provide the clarity, and I think will provide a lot of opportunities for simply evasion of their intent. I respect the goals. The goal is clarity. We all want that. But I think you've got to be very careful about how you achieve that.
Some people talk about regulatory standards for centralized systems, that they're inappropriate for crypto because it's inherently decentralized. But many of these protocols are run by centralized teams that control governance, the incentives, and even the code. So how should Congress decide when a so-called decentralized protocol acts more like a centralized financial intermediary and regulate it as such?
I think the principle Congress should have is just because it's decentralized doesn't mean it's free of regulation. Regulation may be different, but for example, if we had a decentralized protocol that became the primary market for trading Treasury securities, we would not say, oh, because it's a decentralized protocol, we don't need to worry about regulation. So I think we may need different rules, but we still need rules.
Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Kim.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Levin, I'd like to just start with you. You know, I had gone through the Chainalysis 2025 Crypto Crime Report. First of all, thank you for that type of detail. But I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate on the role of mixers, other types of smart contracts, other types of anonymization tools in terms of facilitating illicit finance, illicit trading.
Thank you, Senator, and appreciate you taking the time to read the report. We at Chainalysis track the different types of anonymizing techniques used by illicit actors to thwart law enforcement actually being able to get after them. And actually, we have seen that mixers are used by illicit actors to cover their tracks in terms of laundering proceeds of crime. But there is also another side of this, which is it's possible to continue to trace through certain types of mixers in certain instances, and we've seen law enforcement be successful in those regards. I would say that it is important, as the committee thinks about regulating this space, to look at what are the residual risks that are there, given all of the tools in the disposal of law enforcement and all of the authorities that intelligence and law enforcement has in this domain.
I just want to make sure that I'm building this out right. So, you know, for instance, you talked about in your hearing, in your testimony, that public ledgers underpin most digital asset activity, allows for visibility, certain amount of transparency. But, you know, am I right that these anonymization tools are ones that obfuscate, that make it more difficult to be able to track?
Yes, Senator, it is correct that the majority of activity on these ledgers is transparent, and you can see which entities are involved. And Chainalysis provides the unique intelligence about whether it is a mixer that is transacting or whether that is a centralized exchange. And so it is possible to identify that activity. It is also possible in certain instances to actually be able to trace through those mixers and continue the hunt for a law enforcement agent.
I understand that in terms of the analysis to be able to track, but it does do a lot of that after the fact, after the transactions have already occurred, which makes it very difficult to be able to try to actually intervene, to be able to prevent these transactions from occurring. But I don't discount the fact that it's certainly helpful, especially when it comes to writing SAR reports or other things afterwards. Who are some of the actors that we're talking about here? I mean, we're talking about countries like North Korea and Iran, is that right?
Yes, Senator, really any illicit actor that is using cryptocurrency can use any type of service, and we've seen DPRK and we've seen Iran use mixers.
We also see different terrorist groups, is that correct?
In general, we have seen that terrorist organizations actually use very convenient technologies to be able to fundraise or pay people, and so we have seen less use of mixers in the context of terrorist financing actually than you would expect.
So terrorist groups still utilizing crypto in different ways, as well as cartels and other organizations like that. Is that right?
Senator, the illicit actors globally use the same technologies, the same services that all of us who use cryptocurrencies use, which is any type of instrument in cryptocurrencies.
Mr. Garlinghouse, I'd like to just kind of turn to you. I mean, I just wanted to just get your thoughts on this. I mean, do you acknowledge what Mr. Levin's saying in terms of the illicit actors, the bad actors being able to utilize crypto right now? And, I certainly appreciate the efforts that your company has made in terms of AML, but, we're still seeing these problems. Is that something that you see and recognize as well?
Ripple has always been a compliance-first company, and as I said in my early testimony, we have over 60 licenses around the world. That being said, I think anytime you see bad actors, they're looking for, as Mr. Levin said, whatever the easiest path is. They use cash, they use other assets. I've even read about them using gold.
Yeah.
So certainly they're also experimenting and trying to use digital assets. I think the good news has been, in many cases, they don't often understand how traceable and trackable that actually is, and it's more trackable than obviously cash.
Yeah, but we're still seeing the anonymization tools being utilized, and again, a lot of that is after the fact. The difficulty, I mean, we saw North Korea right in front of the world be able to hack and take billions of dollars. We can see them moving around, but we had difficulty to be able to actually intervene. I don't discount the fact that we're never going to be able to stop it all. We can't stop it with cash. I think the problem that I see is that I used to work on counter-terrorist financing, and the sheer scale of this is enormous. It's an industrialization of North Korea's ability. They don't need to counterfeit anymore. They're finding ways to be able to do this. So I just hope that we can work together with industry, because I believe that industry doesn't want to have crypto be able to utilized in this way. I worry about the trajectory, what it might do to evade sanctions and other types of efforts. And this is something that I hope that we can address, especially when we're talking about over $50 billion just last year being used for illicit actors in this space. So I hope that this is something we can build off from. We had some efforts in this in a bipartisan way in the Genius Act, and I hope that we can make this a priority to make sure that we're trying to stop the terrorist groups, the cartels that we have talked about standing up against in so many different ways. And with that, I'll yield back.
Senator Lumens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing and for indulging us in finally addressing the topic of digital assets. When I arrived here 4.5 years ago, there was very little knowledge about digital assets. And to the extent that there was fear because it is something about which people knew very little, and in some cases still know very little. Yet the industry has innovated and grown and become a force in our economy, and in fact in the global economy. We now see one digital asset company not only make an appearance on the S&P 500, but come into the S&P 500 in about the 135th position. That's how big this company is. We see several companies going public this year that are based in the digital asset industry. Yet we've seen foreign countries get ahead of the United States in terms of establishing a clear regulatory framework for digital assets. We have allowed regulatory agencies that are unfriendly toward this asset to use regulatory functions such as enforcement actions to bring about a regulatory morass for these industries when they've been unable to find out what regulatory framework they're supposed to follow, not having received clear guidance from the regulatory agencies to which they're subject and hope to comply. So we finally have an industry coming and requesting regulation so we know the rules of the road, so we can integrate this tremendous new technology into our economy. And so the time has come, and Mr. Chairman, I'm so pleased that you recognize the relevance, importance of the United States leading in this space. I also want to thank Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who joined me shortly after I arrived here in drafting legislation that has been out for 4 years, that people could look at, that people could comment on, that we could reform and change as the industry grew, and their ability to shape the regulatory framework that protects consumers, but that also works for the innovators. And that is the point at which we've arrived today. We are ready to take that step. So I want to thank my colleagues on the other side of the aisle for their diligence in working with our side of the aisle to bring legislation about, starting with the Genius Act that dealt with the stablecoin component of digital assets, and now moving into the commodities and securities portion of a market framework. I believe we're taking the right step and not a moment too soon. You know, government's always been afraid of innovation, and the innovators in our country have had to cross barriers in order to achieve what humans are capable of and have to fight government to surpass. You look at the internet, that the cypherpunks of the 80s and 90s were creating code and using cryptography, and the government was afraid of it, so the NSA called it a weapon, cryptography a weapon, and classified it as something that should not be available to the general public. But our courts in this country decided that cryptography and code writing is protected free speech under the First Amendment. And that was a game changer. It made it possible for those very brilliant minds to make available to each other through open source the cryptography and code writing that made it possible in 2009 for the first digital assets to appear on the scene. So now we're at the point where from 2009 and where we are today, we have a mature industry that is asking us to provide clear rules of the road. And as people responsible for the government and as members of the Banking Committee, we're in the right place at the right time to help these innovators take their rightful place in the global economy as an asset that is important to our country, that is important to individual freedom, that is important to the unbanked and underbanked, and that will make available to people the opportunity to grow assets that are capable of increasing in value, as opposed to our own US dollar, which is by design decreasing in value. Mr. Chairman, your leadership in this effort is deeply appreciated by me, and I look forward to working with you, Senator Gillibrand, and other people on both sides of the aisle to bring this legislation through the Senate, to the House, and to the President's desk. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Thank you for your leadership on such an important topic. And let me just get through some of my necessary comments, and then I'll close with a couple comments about Senator Lumens and Gillibrand and others. For senators who wish to submit questions for the hearing record, those questions are due 1 week from today, Wednesday, July 16th. To our witnesses, you will have 45 days from that day to submit your responses to questions for the record. Thank you for your attendance to the panel today. In closing, I'd like to thank you for your time. I thought your testimony today was some of the best testimonies I've heard in my 10 years on the committee. They were clear, they were consistent, they were forward-looking, mostly, not all, mostly forward-looking. I truly appreciate that approach to it. I will say that Senator Lumens and Senator Gillibrand have worked on this topic for a number of years and are, frankly, thought leaders on both sides of the aisle. I think they're very important thought leaders. I hope we all remember and remember very clearly that our words are containers of power. We can weaponize them against Senator Gillibrand or President Trump if we want to. I think it marginalizes what you have to say. I think it reduces your actual contribution to this hearing. And I think it trivializes such a really important issue. And I think we should keep our focus on the main thing. And the main thing is safeguarding investors, protecting the marketplace, and protecting our nation's security. And that should be our objective. And that's what I heard mostly here today. And I hope that as we move forward on market structure, this is just a first step, guiding principles. We have not put forth legislation yet, but as we do so, we will do so not as red or blue, but those committed to red, white, and blue. And that is our objective, and we will achieve that objective. Thank you all for being here. Meeting adjourned.
Okay, so Loomis basically just said, screw you altcoins. She didn't ask anyone any questions. She kept mentioning up the date that BTC was created, and yeah, wow. Okay. That was wild. We saw Kennedy kind of have a little fun there. Mr. Painter was a piece of crap. XRP price-wise held pretty good. I mean, we saw kind of things get down a little bit here to the low of 235, but overall, I mean, we're still holding. This is nice. That was a wild hearing. I think a lot of us can agree that they did not say much to Brad. I mean, there was not much to Brad at all. Nice, buddy. I think that it was clear that this was very much like a big picture meeting. This was very much about partisan politics, but I think this was a lot of people out here going, yo, we got problems. It appears that we'll get the Genius Act through, and remember that's for stablecoins, but yo, you might have some real problems getting the Clarity Act through. Christian is hanging out that says Lumens probably did what BTC 101 course on a LinkedIn. Yeah, Loomis was horrible. She didn't ask a single question. She basically brought up the history of BTC without calling it BTC. That was wild. Yeah, Loomis. Oh, here's the thing. Loomis is a BTC maxi, so she doesn't really want to do anything that helps out the alts. She does want to kind of make this legislation go forward because she knows what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Yeah, this was wild, man. Garlinghouse got asked a couple of questions. He really didn't get featured much. That was very interesting. You saw a lot of people here with TDS. Marvin says, thanks for the stream. You're very welcome. I'm glad you liked it. This was eye-opening. I think we all saw live. There's a lot of problems. You even have some Democrats that are obviously super against it. You have some Republicans that are somewhat against it. So this is kind of this is not clean. I think we saw that today. This is not clean. And you have people out there saying, hey, look, if you don't do this right, you're going to crash the markets like you did in the late 20s. That scares a lot of people. Even zoom out just a little bit for what's happened recently, right? Trump's big, beautiful bill was a 50-50 vote in the Senate with the Vice President, J.D. Vance, being the tiebreaker vote. That's on a big budget bill. Crypto is even more risque, alt-class crypto, right? Stablecoins, come on, let's be real here. That already got through the Senate. But you're talking about the Clarity Act for altcoins. That's not a slam dunkeroni, everyone. Yeah, Trick says this was eye-opening for sure. For real, this was very eye-opening. This was not as clean as I think a lot of us were expecting. There was a lot of people that even their questions were like, hey, well, what do you suggest? And when they asked the people, they were like, yo, you kind of need to come up with something new altogether. And it's like, oh, so wait, you mean the Clarity Act kind of sucks? And like, yeah, it really does. So we're sitting here going, oh, shit, man. Like, we might really need to scrap the Clarity Act and make something completely altogether. And then for the gentleman, Mr. Painter, that was talking about, you know, the SEC and the CFTC should do this together, that's horrible because we saw that the SEC under Gary Gensler was basically doing crypto regulation through enforcement. He stifled an entire industry. So that's not the answer either. That didn't work. They brought up the idea of meme coins being looked at as collectibles. That's very interesting because you know what that means? Meme wouldn't need any regs. It would just need to be classified as collectibles. This is crazy because I think we've seen now firsthand this is not going to be clean. So now check this out. Next week we got Crypto Week, right? It's like Shark Week, but for crypto. Are we going to see in the House the same problems occur? This is kind of now what's making me wonder about this. I mean, I don't know. This is something we're going to all have to pay attention to because if we have problems in the House with the Clarity Act, we're definitely after not getting regs anytime soon. We're going to have problems with the Senate as we've seen. We have problems with the House. We got a big issue. Big issue. What kind of questions and comments do you have about this? Chat was absolutely freaking lit here. I mean, y'all were totally into it. Honestly, lots of great comments coming from chat. Lots of y'all were picking up on the same things. By the way, 2,700 of you voted saying, yes, Brad will pimp XRP. He did in his opening statement. Outside of that, he did not. So just throwing it out there. Spark Water says, I'm not enthusiastic about Crypto Week. I'm enthusiastic about Crypto Week because I really want to get insight. Like, what's their time frames? Is it going to be clean? What does the House want to look at, like, for Genius Act? Like, how quickly can they do that cleanly? I'm enthusiastic about that. I'm just cautious because I'm like, oh, crap, are they going to be clean about it? Trick says clarity in 2025. Krishna's dropping 5 memberships for the next 5 people. Well done. Allow gift memberships. Yeah, of course I'm going to allow. Hey, I got to click on that. Stop that. How do I do that? Yeah. All right, there you go. Turning it on. It is on. My changes have been saved. 5 gift memberships. Thank you, Krishna. There you go. Everyone give Krishna a big thank you for the membership gifting right there. I think also what we found is a big problem here is Trump getting into crypto, Trump getting into meme coins, Trump getting into stable coins. That's a big letter of contention with the Democrats here. But what bothers me about that is, well, then is it okay for y'all to insider trade stocks? Both sides of the aisle do it. So what's, like, these people make like a couple $100,000, right? These people make a couple $100,000 a year, but they're worth millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. You see what I'm saying here? So, like, I'm kind of looking at this going, well, wait a minute. You don't want to be able to trade crypto, but you're kind of cool with the concept of, yo, we could be able to trade inside stock. Like, that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is kind of just crazy. It's just, I don't know. Aaron W. says, appreciate the stream, Klaus. Tracy Howard says $179,000. That's what I'm saying. It's right around like $200,000. And yet these people are worth like millions and millions of dollars. So I don't know. That's what I'm saying. We're seeing a lot of friction here. A lot more than what was painted out when we saw the election, right? Because remember with the election, we were talking about how both sides of the aisle were very pro-crypto, right? Both sides were like, yo, this is pretty cool. We're going to be good with this. Were they just saying that because they were getting crypto money then? Because they were trying to pimp us for our votes? It almost appears that way. So now we're looking at it going, well, wait a minute. So you used us for the votes, and now what? Now you're just screwed with us? Like, that's just kind of bullshit. Just kind of BS, just throwing it out there. Yeah. I'm shocked. Let's get to some of your questions. So if you got them, hit them up in the chat. I'm looking at it on my second monitor over here. Once Proud Canuck says, thanks, cause. Thank everyone. Seriously, this was a lot of fun today. Very active in the chat. I think at one time I saw 2,300 people here on this stream. And no, I'm not trying to sell you some stupid course. No, not some $20 Discord bullshit a month. Nothing like that. Hanging out with you. Hanging out here. Says rumors are to come out on X. Can you check about Jerome Powell resigning? No, Jerome Powell's not gonna resign. His job ends 2026. He's just gonna ride out the last bit of his job and be done. Why would he resign? He's so close to the finish line. He's gonna do his thing. He is gonna do his thing. Yeah, all the Jerome quitting thing. That's the same crap you see over on Twitter all the time. Oh, Jerome's going to quit. No, it's not like that at all. Not like that at all. Oh, gosh. Yeah, so if you got questions, let's hear them. The stream was awesome. Anarchist State of Mind said, had a great time. Klaus, thanks for the stream, bro. Yeah, appreciate it. Christmas is 2,300 people, only 812 likes. What the fuck? Start smashing that like button. Yeah, for real, smash that like button. The stream was great. Oh, there you go. There you go. If you don't smash the like button, I'm going to leave this lady up on the screen. That's what I'm going to do. This is what happens. If we don't get the likes up, I'm leaving Pocahontas up on the screen. That's how this works. We have changed. Now the viewers don't matter most. Now likes matter most. All right? So Pocahontas stays up on the screen unless we see the likes go up. That's just how this works. I'm sorry. Rules have changed. That's how it is. I'm holding the stream for ransom right now. Likes for Pocahontas. That's how it works. Craig Bowe says, Klaus, always fun hanging out. Yeah, these are always fun times. Andrew Leaf says, love this community. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun. I think we just got to be honest here. It's friction. It's frustrating, and it's partisan politics, man. Partisan politics. Yeah, I did just see the likes just totally jump up, totally crazy on this one. So just throwing it out there. I think I might have to just hold you guys all hostage every once in a while and be like, get the likes up or else Warren goes back. That's how it works. Look, you either click like or Warren stays on. I think every once in a while I'm just going to have to do that in the videos too. Maybe I will. Price-wise, though, we're holding it at least for the moment. This is kind of cool. I mean, we're above the 230 zone, which is awesome. I know people were expecting more. I get that. This is so cool. Volume right now, 4.3 billion, up 19% last 24 hours. You can see the one day right where we touched it and then came on back down. Like I said, the 15-minute candlestick shows you exactly that story. Yeah, there is a lot of Jerome hopium out there. Jerome's not going to quit, everyone. Just throwing it out there. He is not going to quit. It did work. Holding the stream hostage and showing a picture of Warren helped get those likes up. We're almost at 1,000 likes. Yeah, in her bathing suit. Oh man. Oh wow. What a interesting live though today. I was really hoping though, honestly, I was really hoping that Brad would have said more. Honestly. He really did not say much. He had his opening statement and that was it. It was kind of quiet from Brad. He didn't have many questions asked of him either. That was kind of shocking. Agrar Hans hanging out with us, entry supporter. Welcome to the family. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of sucks, man. I was expecting him to be asked a little bit more, or maybe even ask questions like this, right? Like, Mr. Garlinghouse, based on your experience, what are some things that could help us out? Just something more along those lines. Frodo says, why didn't they ask him more? That's a great question. Obviously, the Democrats, the anti-crypto players were asking the two gentlemen to the far side of the panel questions, right? They were answering the haters' questions. The gentleman with the good accent, he was really good. He was a statistics guy. That's awesome. So just, you could tell, I guess maybe they were afraid to pick on a specific crypto. They were kind of going for big topic stuff. It was frustrating. I think they could have gone with more Brad questions, but You know, the reality is Loomis wasn't going to ask Brad anything. Loomis wasn't going to ask anyone anything, so that was gone. The Democrats weren't going to ask Garlinghouse anything because, remember, they're running cover for Gary Gensler. So Melvin says it pretty well. Melvin says Brad scares them. He's the most intelligently versed person up there. Krishna says, Klaus, I have a feeling they avoided Brad because he also started calling people out. Yeah, remember, he did publicly call Loomis out, too. He did on Twitter publicly call Loomis out there. So just throwing it out there. Dan Russell says the committee was talking. They weren't listening most of the time. That's very true. There was some grandstanding done. Now, I will admit, be real here, okay? For anyone that's done these live streams with the House, too, tell me, though, the House grandstands way worse than the Senate. This was way less grandstanding than the House. All right. Now, don't get me wrong. There was some crashing out here going on. Let's admit, Kennedy had some fun ones. Mr. Painter was kind of freaking out a little bit, you know. But that's what it's all about. Let's see. What else do we got going on right now? A lot of people are talking about Jerome Powell. I'm not worried about that. I'm honestly thinking the whole Jerome Powell thing is all BS. Remember, he's going to be done with his term in 2026, and then Trump's next replacement can come in. July 14th starts Crypto Week. That's going to be interesting. That's on the House, okay? So this was a Senate subcommittee. We're going to be watching the other side. We're going to be watching the House tackle that in Crypto Week. Now, remember, there's going to be 3 bills. They're going to be talking Genius Clarity, and then the third one, I always forget what the third one is, if it was the innovation one. I think it's the innovation one, or it's FIT. It was FIT or innovation, I don't remember. Well, either way, there's 3 that are going to be discussed in the House next week. That is going to tell you what we need, man. That is what we're going to need. Larry Bial says, ladies, tell a girlfriend about crypto with Klaus. They'll love you for it. Yeah, only 7% of the viewers right now are ladies. Just throwing it out there for a stat for you. Kind of a sausage fest in the hood, the Crypto with Klaus hood. Crypto itself is basically a sausage fest if you haven't noticed it. Less than 10% of crypto execs are women. Just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there. A lot of people out there are thinking that this was disappointing. I don't want to say disappointing. For me, this was, I guess, just more eye-opening on how much friction there actually is. I think that's a big one. There's a lot of friction. There's a lot of more friction than what I was expecting here as well. So I wasn't disappointed. I guess I was just hoping for a little bit more bipartisanship, equal ground, a little less Trump derangement syndrome here. Tiger Mike says realistic goals here. Genius Act by August, Clarity Act by October, full implementation January 2026. Yeah, Genius Act, I think we're getting that through first. Clarity Act a little bit later here. All right, we are sitting right here at 12:35. What we're going to do a stream end at 12:40. All right, let me put that down in the old chat right here. Hold on a second here. Stream ends at 12:40 p.m. Eastern Time. Get your last questions in. All right, get your last questions in. What I'm going to do is then I'm going to do a summary video for this for everyone that couldn't make it to the stream. That way everyone kind of feels included, because this was definitely one that caught us off guard. You know, we see that Trump getting into crypto really pissed a lot of people off, man. A lot of people off. Slab of the week. Okay. Oh, okay. Slab of the week. You ready? Here, I'll do one. Hold on. Here we go. Hold on. I'll do one. You guys are going to love this one. All right. Here we go. Slab of the week. Are you all ready for this one? All right. Hold on. I'll put my light on. Krishna asked for slab of the week. Are you ready? Hold on. I'm trying to figure this out here. This is very hard for me to see. All right. Here we go. Check it out. A Carlton Fisk Tops. PSA 10 auto grade slab. Look at that. Look at that. 73 tops. Carlton Fisk. Oh, look at that. Look at the signature on that. That is juicy. That is slab of the week right there. Just throwing it out there. So for anyone that wanted slab of the week, and this card, oh, love it. Sorry. I just thought, see? Juicy slab of the week. Just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there. Slab of the week. No Joe Jackson. No. Come on now. I didn't pull out the Charizards. I got some Charizards up on the wall over there. Any new guns? No, I have not purchased any new pistolas as of late. I have like every pistola I would want. Like I do. I have like everything I could ever want. So like, unless something crazy comes out, just throwing it out there. Please give us your top 5 choices for ISO compliant. You really don't have many more than 5, honestly. When it comes to ISO, play it like this. Look at the ones that have the strongest following. Look at the ones that over the last several cycles have played the best. Look at the ones that when you compare them to their peers have had the strongest movements and the strongest floors. That is the key. All right? That is what you got to look at, because when you look at ISO, you got to look at this. It's a messaging standard. That's it, right? Then get rid of that and start looking at as that group and think, okay, of that group, which one is constantly performing the best? I don't know about top 5. I would almost go stick with the top 3 if you get what I'm saying. Wink, wink. Thought it was pretty good for you what there. Let's see. RG7217 said, what did your day job used to be before you started your broadcast? I'm an operations guy. I was a corporate operations guy. Manufacturing, high volume manufacturing. I was really big into turning things around. I did a lot of big corporate projects. I did all sorts of stuff corporately like that. Everything from taking places and doing mergers and acquisitions to taking things, turning them into storefronts, which is not fun. Customer service model change up. So when I was at the end of my run there, I started seeing where we started changing business models, right? We would go into places and we would take these manufacturing places and we would change them up to where we were going to more robotics. We were going to more remote manufacturing. We were going to more remote customer service models. So I would go into these places and start figuring out, hey, look, we're not going to have customer service here anymore. We're going to move you over to a call center. So we're going to move your customer base to a call center, but we're going to keep finalized manufacturing in your facility, remote manufacturing for 80% of your workout. And that's kind of what I did. So before I got into this, that's exactly what I did. I was an operations person, and I did a lot of special projects. That was my big thing. I was management operations, and my big specialty was special projects. I was really big into mergers, acquisitions, and big scale change operation projects, change management projects. That's my big thing. So yeah, that's what I did before I did this. And I love that. And I really love this. What I love about this more than anything is I get to interact with y'all more frequently. What I didn't like about the corporate thing is as you move up, you get less involved with the people on the floor. And that I don't like that. I like dealing with people, and I like dealing with the worker. I like dealing with the people that get their hands dirty. I like dealing with the people that are part of the process. That's why I like people here. You know what I mean? That's why I like this. I like being with the people. So, let's see. Any other questions y'all got? Let me know in the comments. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you all real quick. Okay, let me ask you a question. If Ripple were to do an IPO, A, would you get into it? B, would you sell some of your XRP to get into a Ripple IPO? Let me know. Let me know those two things. A, if Ripple got into an IPO, would you get into it? And B, would you unload some of your XRP bags to buy Ripple IPO? That's a good question. Justin Sauter says, will you do more live streams? I will try to do more on the live streams. The problem is I've been fairly sick, and it's really hard on my sinuses and my throat and my voice. Live streams where, like, I talk a lot, like these end segments are really rough on me. When I do videos, like, and I do my segments, I can do a segment, I can chill out, like, I can slam water, I can, like, take a breath. These things, like, really, really, like rough up my throat. And until, like, I see the specialist and we get everything figured out, I just have to be very careful with, like, how much I talk consistently. A lot of you are saying, so yes, you would get into the IPO, but no, you would not use your XRP to do it. Okay, cool, very cool. I'm just trying to gauge where people are at for that. And the reason I'm asking that is because Ripple doesn't need the money. They have plenty of money, right? They've been using XRP for money, so they have plenty of money. But I think that in the future, as companies look at this tool to raise more capital, these IPOs in crypto, once we get regs, are going to be really juicy. Just throwing it out there. Krishna says, using dry powder and sell a little bit of my XRP to purchase. And that's my whole thing. These IPOs have been juicy, man. They have been very, very juicy. Let's see. Robert Melvin said, if we didn't know better, we swear you were trying to say you were a people person. Yeah, I love hanging out with, like, people and interacting with people. And that's kind of like the whole thing. Like, the corporate thing is cool. Like, it's really, really cool. But the problem is like, it's not really cool when you're the person that when you walk into a facility, they're like, oh shit, is he there to fire everyone? Like, that's not cool. Like, and that's kind of like what the end of my career stuff was like. And I didn't like that. And I like this because, like, this is positive stuff. This is fun. So, Sundance says, Klaus, you're the best host. Thanks for this event. Aaron Brooks says, I would swap half my bag. Interesting. Sean Mason says, I would sell my XLM though to buy it. Yeah, I think Ripple IPO, if they were to ever do it, would definitely be hot, everyone. I think a lot of people agree that it would be a very, very hot IPO. All right, everyone, you know the deal. I'm going to play some music up on the screen. I'm going to hang out and chat a little bit. Yeah, play some music, hang out and chat. You know the deal. I will catch you cool cats later.
But I don't want to miss you, baby. So I stand up and speak just my mind. Oh. You're chilling wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're channeling wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, oh, my